Hey everyone, this is Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series hosted by miserytourism.com. Each Friday evening, we welcome outsider and transgressive authors to come and read their work, and that's pretty much it. That's the whole fucking thing. So let's get started here. Josh, actually, you're up first tonight, and you're going to read a piece by Sherwood Anderson, right?
Yeah, so I actually think that he's a very relevant author. I think that like his I was thinking earlier, what was the term? I don't know. It's a minimalism. It's a strange minimalism, and I think it's very relevant to how people write today. And people don't often look to him. I think he's been neglected. So I will read the story. I'm sorry if it. I don't. It's not very long, but it's not very short. Uh, so it's called "In a Strange Town." A morning in a country town in a strange place. Everything is quiet. No, there are sounds. Sounds assert themselves. A boy whistles. I can hear a sound here, where I stand, at the railroad station. I have come away from home. I am in a strange place. There is no such thing as silence. Once I was in the country. I was at the house of a friend. You see, there is not a sound here. It is completely silent. My friend said that because he was used to the little sounds of the place, the humming of insects, the sound of falling water far off, the faint clattering of a man with a machine in the distance cutting hay. He was accustomed to the sounds and did not hear them. Here, where I am now, I hear a beating sound. Someone has hung a carpet on a clothesline and is beating it. Another boy far off shouts, "It is good to go and come." You arrive in a strange place. There is a street facing a railroad track. You get off the train with your bags. Two porters fight for possession of your bags, as you have seen porters do with strangers in your own town. As you stand at the station, there are things to be seen. You you see the open doors of stores on the street that faces the station. People go in and out. An old man stops and looks. Why there is the morning train. This mind is saying to him. The mind is always saying such things to people. Look, be aware. The fancy wants to float free of the body. We put a stop to that. Most of us live our lives like toads, perfectly still under a plantain leaf. We are waiting for a fly to come our way. When it comes, out darts our tongue. We nab it. That is all. We eat it. But how many questions to be asked that are never asked? Whence came the fly? Where was he going? The fly might have been going to meet his sweetheart. He was stopped. A spider ate him. The train on which I have been riding, a slow one, pauses for a time. All right, I'll go to the Empire House, as though I cared. It is a small town, this one, to which I have come. In any event, I'll be uncomfortable here. There will be some kind of cheap brass beds at as at the last place I went, unexpectedly like this, with bugs in the bed, perhaps. A traveling salesman will talk in a loud voice in the next room. He will be talking to a friend, another traveling salesman. Trade is bad, one of them will say. Yes, it's rotten. There will be confidences about women picked up, some words heard, others missed. That is always annoying. But why did I get off the train here at this particular town? I remember that I had been told there was a lake here, that there was fishing. I thought I would go fishing. Perhaps I expected to swim, I remember now. Porter, where is the Empire House? Oh, the brick one? All right, go ahead. I'll be along pretty soon. You tell the clerk to go save me a room, save a bath if they have one. I remember what I was thinking about. All my life since that happened, I have been going off on adventures like this. A man likes to be alone sometimes. Being alone doesn't mean being where there are no people. It means being where people are all strangers to you. There is a woman crying there. She is getting old, that woman. Well, I myself, no longer young, see how tired her eyes are. There is a younger woman with her. In time, that younger woman will look exactly like her mother. She will have the same patient, resigned look. The skin will sag on her cheeks that are plump now. The mother has a large nose, and so has the daughter. There is a man with them. He is fat, and he has red veins in his face. For some reason, I think he must be a butcher. He has that kind of hands, that kind of eyes. I am pretty sure he is the woman's brother. Her husband is dead. They are putting a coffin on the train. They are people of no importance. People pass them casually. No one has come to the station with them in their hour of trouble. I wonder if they live here. Yes, of course they do. They live somewhere, in a rather mean little house at the edge of town, or perhaps outside of town. You see, the brother is not going away with the mother and daughter. He has just come down to see them off. They're going with the body to another town where the husband who is dead formerly lived. The butcher-like man has taken his sister's arm. That is a gesture of tenderness. Such people make such gestures only when someone in the family is dead. The sun shines. The conductor of the train is walking along the station platform and talking to the station manager. They have been laughing loudly, having their little joke. The conductor is one of the jolly sort. His eyes twinkle, as the saying is. He has his little joke with every station master, every telegraph operator, baggage man, express man along the way. There are all kinds of conductors of passenger trains. There, you see, they are passing the woman whose husband has died and is being taken away somewhere to be buried. They drop their jokes, their laughter, they become silent. A little path of silence made by that woman in black and her daughter and the fat brother. The little path of silence has started with them at their house, has gone with them along streets to the railroad station, will be with them to the train and in the town to which they are going. They are people of no importance, but they have suddenly become important. They are symbols of death. Death is an important and majestic thing, eh? How easily you can comprehend life when you are in a place like this, in a strange place, among strange people. Everything is so much like other towns you have been in. Lives are made up of little series of circumstances. They repeat themselves over and over in towns everywhere, in cities, in all of countries. They're of infinite variety. In Paris, when I was there last year, I went to the Louvre. There were women and men there making copies of the works of the old masters that were hung on the walls. They were professional copyists. They worked painstakingly, were trained to do just that kind of work very exactly. And yet, no one of them could make a copy. There were no copies made. The little circumstances of no two lives anywhere in the world are just alike. You see, I have come into a hotel now in this strange town. In a country town hotel, there are flies here. A fly has just alighted on this paper on which I have been writing these impressions. I stopped writing and looked at the fly. There must be billions of flies in the world, and yet I dare say no two of them are alike. The circumstances of their lives are just not alike. I think I must come away from my own place on trips, such as I am now, for a specific reason. At home, I live in a certain house. There is my own household, the servants, the people of my household. I am a professor of philosophy in a college town of my own, hold a certain definite position there in the town life and the college life. Conversations in the evening, music, people coming into our house, myself going to a certain office, then to a classroom where I lecture, seeing people there. I know things about these people. That is the trouble with me. I know something, but not enough. My mind, my fancy, becomes dull looking at them. I know too much and not enough. It is like a house in the street in which I live. There is a particular house in that street in my hometown I was formerly curious about. For some reason, the people who lived in it were recluses. They seldom came out of their house and hardly ever out of the yard into the street. Well, what of all that? My curiosity was aroused. That is all. I used to walk past the house with something strangely alive in me. I had figured out this much. An old man with a beard and a white faced woman lived there. There was a tall hedge, and once I looked through. I saw the man walking nervously up and down on a bit of lawn under a tree. He was clasping and unclasping his hands and muttering words. The doors and shutters of the mysterious house were all closed. As I looked, the old woman with the white face opened the door and looked out at the man. Then the door closed. She said nothing to him. Did she look at him with love or with fear in her eyes? How do I know? I couldn't see. Another time, I heard a young woman's voice, although I never saw a young woman about the place. It was evening, and the young woman was singing. A rather sweet young woman's voice it was. There you are. That is all. Life is more like that than people suppose. Little odd fragmentary ends of things. That is about all we get. I used to walk past that place all alive, curious. I enjoyed it. My heart thumped a little. I heard sounds more distinctly, felt more. I was curious enough to ask my friends along the street about the people. They're queer, they said. Well, who is not queer? The point is that my curiosity gradually died. I accepted the queerness of the life of that house. It became a part of life of my street. I became dulled to it. I have become dulled to the life of my own house or my street, to the lives of my pupils. Where am I? Who am I? Whence I came? Who asks himself these questions anymore? There is that woman I saw taking her dead husband away on the train. I saw her only for a moment before I walked over to this hotel and came up to this room. An entirely commonplace room it is. But here I sit, thinking of her. I reconstruct her life, go on living the rest of her life with her. Often I do things like this, come off alone to a strange place like this. Where are you going? My wife says to me. I am taking a bath, I say. My wife thinks I am a bit queer too, but she has grown used to me. Thank God, she is patient and good natured. I am going to bathe myself in the lives of people about whom I know nothing. I will sit in this hotel until I am tired of it, and then I will walk in the strange streets, see strange houses, strange faces. People will see me. Who is he? He is a stranger. That is nice. I like that. To be a stranger sometimes, going about in a strange place, having no business there, just walking, thinking, bathing myself. To give others, the people in this strange place, a little jump at the heart too, because I am something strange. Once, when I was a young man, I would have tried to pick up a girl. Being in a strange place, I would have tried to get my jump at the heart. I was trying to be with her. Now I do not do that. It is not because I am especially faithful, as the saying goes, to my wife, or that I am interested in strange and attractive women. It is because of something else. It may be that I am a bit dirty with life and have come here to this strange place to bathe myself in strange life and get clean and fresh again. And so I walk in this strange place. I dream. I let myself have fancies. Already, I have been out into the street, into several streets of this town, and have walked about. I have aroused in myself a little stream of fresh fancies clustered about strange lives, and I have walked being a stranger, going along slowly, carrying a cane, stopping to look into stores, stopping to look into the windows of houses and into gardens. I have, you see, aroused in others something the same feeling that has been in me. I have liked that. Tonight, in the houses of this town, there will be something to speak of. There was a strange man about. He acted queerly. I wonder who he was. What did he look like? An attempt to delve into me too, to describe me, pictures being made in other minds, a little current of thoughts, fancies started in others, in me too. I sit here in this room, in this strange room, in this hotel, feeling oddly refreshed. Already I have slept here. My sleep was sweet. Now it is morning, and everything is still. I dare say that sometime today I shall get on another train and go home. But now I am remembering things. Yesterday in this town, I was in a barber shop. I got my hair cut. I hate getting my hair cut. I am in a strange town with nothing to do. So I got my hair cut. I said to myself as I went in, a man cut my hair. It rained a week ago, he said. Yes, I said. That is all the conversation there was between us. However, there was other talk in that barber shop, plenty of it. A man had been there in this town and had passed some bad checks. One of them was for $10 and was made out in the name of one of the barbers in the shop. The man who passed the checks was a stranger, like myself. There was talk of that. A man came in who looked like President Coolidge and had his hair cut. Then there was another man who came in for a shave. He was an old man with sunken cheeks and for some reason looked like a sailor. I dare say he was just a farmer. This town is not by the sea. There was talk enough in there, a whirl of talk. I came out thinking, well, with me it's like this. A while ago, I was speaking of a habit I formed of going suddenly off like this to some strange place. I have been doing it ever since it happened, I said. I used the expression, it happened. Well, what happened? Not so very much. A girl got killed. She was struck by an automobile. She was a girl in one of my classes. She was nothing special to me. She was just a girl, a woman, really, in one of my classes. When she was killed, I was already married. She used to come into my room, into my office. We used to sit in there and talk. We used to sit and talk about something I had said in my lecture. Did you mean it like this? No, that is not exactly it. It is rather like this. I suppose you know how we philosophers talk. We have almost a language of our own. Sometimes I think it is largely nonsense. I would begin talking to that girl, that woman, and on I would go. She had gray eyes. There was a sweet, serious look on her face. Do you know, when I talk to her like that, it is, I'm pretty sure, nonsense. Well, I thought her eyes seemed to me sometimes to grow a little larger as I talked to her. I had a notion I did not hear what I said. I did not care much. I talked so I would have something to say. Sometimes, when we were together that way in my office in the college building, there would come odd times of silence. No, it was not silence. There were sounds. There was a man walking in the hallway in the college building outside my door. Once, when this happened, I counted the man's footsteps: 26, 27, 28. I was looking at the girl, the woman, and she was looking at me. You see, I was an older man. I was married. I am not such an attractive man. I did, however, think she was very beautiful. There was plenty of young fellows about. I remember that when she had been with me like that, after she had left, I used to sit sometimes for hours alone in my office. I have been sitting here in this hotel room in this strange town. I sat thinking of nothing. Sounds came to me. I remembered things of my boyhood. I remembered things of courtship and marriage. I sat like that, dumbly, a long time. I was dumb, but I was at the same time more aware than I had ever been in my entire life. It was at that time I got the reputation with my wife of being a little queer. I used to go home after sitting dumbly like that with that girl, that woman, and I was even more dumb and silent when I got home. Why don't you talk? My wife said. I'm thinking, I said. I wanted her to believe I was thinking of my work, my studies. Perhaps I was. Well, the girl, the woman, she was killed. An automobile struck her when she was crossing the street. They said she was absent minded, that she was right in front of the car. I was in the office sitting there when a man, another professor, came in and told me. She is quite dead, was quite dead when they picked her up, he said. Yes, I said. I dare say he thought I was pretty cold and unsympathetic. A scholar, eh? Having no heart. It was not the driver's fault. He was quite blameless. She walked right in front of the car? Yes. I remember that at the moment I was fingering a pencil and I did not move. I must have been sitting like that for 3 hours. I got out and walked. I was walking when I saw a train, so I got on. Afterward, I telephoned my wife. I don't remember what I told her at the time. It was all right with her. I made some excuse. She is a patient and good-natured woman. We have 4 children. I dare say she is absorbed with the children. I came to a strange town and I walked about there. I forced myself to observe the little details of life. That time I stayed 3 or 4 days and then I went home. At intervals, I have been doing the same thing ever since. It is because at home I grow dull to little things. Being in a strange place like this makes me more aware. I like it. It makes me more alive. So you see, it is morning and I've been in a strange town where I know no one and where no one knows me. As it was yesterday morning when I came here to this hotel room, there are sounds. A boy whistles in the street, another boy far off shouts. There are voices in the street below my window, strange voices. Someone, somewhere in this town, is beating a carpet. I hear the sound on the arrival of the train. The sun is shining. I may stay here in this town another day, or I may go on to another town. No one knows where I am. I am taking this bath in life, you see, and when I have had enough of it, I shall go home, feeling refreshed.
That was great. I think I read like one of his short stories in college or something. And since then, like Winesburg, Ohio has been on my like to read list for years and years and years. And I've just never gotten around to it. But now I think maybe I'll give it a shot, you know?
And sorry for the length. That was longer than I thought, but I think that's actually a very beautiful story. I think it's
Yeah.
a very I love how the narrator is not addressing the trauma.
Yeah, yeah. You and Stephen were having a conversation before we started about like quiet art and the value of like quietness in art. And I think that story was the perfect example of like how much like profundity, like how much profound shit can be hiding in a very gentle, quiet story. So
Yeah, so
thank you for sharing that.
well, yeah. So I hope it wasn't super boring, but I'm enamored of that story.
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest influences. I think he's brilliant. I think he got a really raw, unfair criticism from Hemingway, but I think yeah, it was simple language. It was direct. It was such a beautiful conveyance of like a character who is so fucked and they can't just address the thing. And so
Right,
he goes on
right.
these trips. Rather than addressing what's fucking him, he goes on these trips. That's insane. But it's
Yeah.
so relatable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, like 100% relatable. Um, Thank you so much for reading, Josh. William Tidwell, are you with us still?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, William, so you're going to be reading a piece that was published in Surfaces not long ago, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
Mike's all yours.
Right. The inherent violence of ancient creatures. It is common in the Orient to discover the inherent violence of ancient creatures, said the narrator of a documentary. A woman struggled in a river at the bottom of a canyon. She remembered sleeping in a hotel with her grandmother, who was also sent to the river, but drowned. Giant jellyfish and squid groped at her dangling legs. The tremendous size of these fauna was common in the Orient, as opposed to the West, from which the woman originated. Time did not pass normally in this region. She described her supernal calm during this situation. A philosopher and his poet friend went to a bordello. It was hexagonal and built into the wall of an underground city. The prostitutes were arranged in a circle of sarcophagi. The philosopher slid back one of the lids, revealing a flat stone surface with an embossment of the prostitute's nervous system, and fell upon it. He ran his fingers along the nerves and laughed that this was all his poet friend urged him to leave. He said the cops were coming and they needed to run. The philosopher couldn't stop laughing. Later it was heard the philosopher had disfigured his lover's face with a hammer and disappeared. I found a paperback novel on my shelf. It was a classic science fiction tale about the aggression of ancient creatures. The cover was a drawing of a gigantic ape in a pickle hob, battling several men with a spear. I had seen it before, but still not opened it. I seem to remember much of its narrative, which appeared before my closed eyes in a series of moonlit vignettes. I was restless through the night. With each dream, I went deeper into the underground city. The walls were blotched silver, dark green, and black. The demons of each realm grew more and more obscure. Their forms of torture were ordered according to the hierarchy of esoteric bodies. The first realm was physical, the second emotional, and the third etheric. These spiritual tortures were the most terrible to me. They were indistinguishable from waking realities, sometimes taking the form of lifespans without memory. They consisted of perverting the subject's higher intuition. The capacity to project into the future was tied and stitched as in a sterilizing operation. This was performed by the mind of a primordial spirit immured in the depths of a silent lake. I came to know a strange solace in this deprivation by which the demons reconciled to their existence. I was taken to a secret chamber rented by a criminal organization that belonged to the world of the invisible. They showed me a sickly green aquarium that housed a sessile organism growing along a slanted surface. It resembled a cephalopod and had been imported supposedly from outer space. The digestive system was mostly external. I learned that to be fed to this creature was the highest form of execution by the organization. The organism excreted a chemical that paralyzed the victim but allowed them to continue breathing underwater. It would be placed facing outwards so that members of the organization could look into its eyes during the process. The mode of digestion was mysterious to me. The organism released objects like marbles from tubular appendages on both sides of its body that rolled down grooves and aided in dissolving its prey. It would be pulled in half from the middle of its skull to its pelvis over a matter of weeks. The victim would be hypnagogic for the majority of this time. Terror, pain, and incomprehension could be read in its face, even as it was split in two. I stared into the eyes of a poor soul whose gender and expression were no longer recognizable, being near complete disintegration. I woke with a familiar nausea that used to make me think I had swallowed a bug in my sleep when I was a kid. That's it.
God, I fucking love this piece.
Oh, sorry, Griffin.
That was sick.
Thank you.
That was beautifully written. And just sorry for everyone else. I think a lot of people really enjoyed that piece. So William actually has a piece we published earlier this week as well called World Damage Control. But getting back to this piece, that was like gorgeously written. I love all the like surreal, horrifying detail. It was one of those pieces that just like completely sucks you in. And
that last one is an actual nightmare that I had.
Really?
Yeah, but several of them are nightmares that I had.
Yeah, just like a completely like wonderful alien landscape there. It's just wonderful. Thank you, William. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And Griffin, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Yeah. Next up is Tyler. Tyler, are you still with us?
Beautiful entrance.
Maybe Tyler stepped away for a minute, actually.
I'm here. I just had to go pee.
Okay. So you're going to be reading a piece that we actually published last week.
Yes. I'll pull up that link for you.
Yeah, I just put the wrong link in the chat again. I've got it up. No, 1 second. There we go. That's the right link.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm going to step away for just a minute. I need to use the bathroom, and I've already read this piece. I'm sorry, Tyler. I don't want to interrupt I feel bad about stepping away, but.
No, that's fine.
Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, this piece is called Transformed. He had turned into a cat sometime in the night. He woke up inside the little cornice at the top of the concrete embankment right underneath the interstate. His sharp cat ears caught the high whine of the cars overhead and the rumbling echoes of the slower cars passing underneath. and it all mixed into a solid wall of cacophony like the wail of the damned. How long he'd slept through that, he had no idea. He smelled the strange odors of the blankets around him, hissed, stopped and smelled them again, and realized they were from his own body, or the body of the person he'd used to be. He took a drink from a rainwater-filled pothole next to the storm sewer, and he had the idea that he might check his reflection to see what kind of cat he had turned into. He always liked cats, and knew a lot of breeds and patterns. Tortie, tabby, snowshoe, Siamese, Russian blue, Scottish curl. He lapped greedily around the bright oil stain atop the puddle. He looked around at the face of the cat in the puddle, but it didn't look like anything to him. As a cat, the self-awareness necessary to recognize himself in a puddle didn't come naturally. He looked and looked at that puddle, trying to bring together his own selfhood with the picture of that cat. But the closer he brought the two ideas together, the harder they pushed apart, like two magnets with the same charge. Later on, he would be pricked by instinct to clean himself and discover that he could bend his spine far and see quite a bit of his own body, but he only dimly remembered the puddle incident by then, and his body didn't look like much to him. Being a cat was a series of urges, panics, and jolting immediacy. He awakened hungry and would be hungry, and stayed that way, the need sitting sentry at the bottom of his stomach like a watchful stalking shadow in the corner of a room. All the time, too, he needed to rest, and every time he caught a sunbeam, a wave of tiredness dampened his mind. And he had to fight the urge to nap, and often lost. His ears, his whiskers, his nose, the nerve clusters along his face and at the base of his tail, all constantly tingled, needling his mind, pulling his focus this way and that. His visual field was muted, and he couldn't get used to the way his eyes focused. He was a tangle of wrestling phantoms, each jostling its way to the front, shouting and demanding attention. Whenever he tried to make a plan for further ahead than the next few minutes, it would soften and crumble under the strain of all this chatter. The way he was grappling with the higher brain functions caused a low-level panic that took all his mettle to suppress. He made his way to the derelict house on the end of the block he lived on once. A revolving gang of at least a dozen cats lived in the dank basement that could be accessed from the outside via the rotten porch, partially covered up with particle board, and the rabbit holes that the cats had dug in the places where the foundation was falling away. He'd never been inside before, only passed by the house on his way to somewhere or other. The elderly retired neighbors fed them, he knew, and watered them, and when there was a snap of cold weather coming in, stacked boxes wrapped in some sort of crinkly heat-trapping substance for the cats to sleep in. These neighbors always used to chase him away, but being a cat now, he could walk right in. The house was in worse condition inside than he had ever dared guess. The entire ceiling in the living room had fallen in. It must have happened sometime after the cats had already claimed the house, because there were several leathery cat corpses beneath the rubble, which the cats had nibbled a little, left to mummify beneath the choking dust. He took a look up the wobbly stairs and found a bedroom with a large bloodstain on the wall. He'd heard that what happened there was some guys were cranked up and fucking around with guns, and there was an accident. Some cat sense within him was able to smell the blood, detect some mixture of chemicals that met his nose with heat and fear. That didn't mix well with that story, but it hardly mattered. The other cats jumped in and out of the light and looked at him with amusement. They weren't really interested in him so long as he stayed on the other side of the room from them. Some hissed at his smell. He was amazed that they could tell his smell apart from the dander and oil and piss and shit smells smeared everywhere, which combined in his nostrils into a brown soup. He heard footsteps on the back porch, and he saw the retired neighbor pour food into huge tin dishes and murmur nicknames to the swarming cat horde. He ran to the porch and quickly discovered that there was a pecking order that determined who got the food and in what order. The established cats of the house, the cats whose fresh smells the other cats could detect mingling with the dust in the broken-up hallways, went first. Each cat had underlings allowed to feed alongside it, but it wasn't a concretely set system because some cats wouldn't feed in the presence of certain other cats, and some cats wouldn't be allowed to eat anything in the presence of certain other cats. There were also cats who weren't permanent residents, who just dropped in, and some of these cats were underlings of other cats, and others had formed a little cast-off clique that fought for food amongst itself. And of course, you had to count for other absences. A cat who was usually there but wasn't there now because it was exploring or rutting or fighting or lying run over in an alley never to return. Keeping all this straight was like trying to make a train schedule in your head. He found 3 cats he could count on to let him eat, simply through trial and error. One fluffy white and brown with mats in its fur the size of ping pong balls. One monstrous orange tabby with a wide face so big he barely needed to lift a paw. And one skinny little Siamese who kept the other cats on their toes by being absolutely psychotic random freakouts. But often they were missing, and that meant he often didn't get any food. And when this happened, he was off on his own to pick through a dumpster or beg at people's back steps for dinner leftovers. He thought he could hunt his way out of hunger, but he was too domesticated. His pounces were lazy, untrained. Living in the house was a dicey proposition even when it wasn't mealtime. It was poor shelter in pretty much any weather. In the daytime, the air grew stuffy and oppressive within the dusty, shuttered windows. At night, drafts came in from all sides and chilled to the bone, and if he'd found finding a spot at the food dish hard then, finding a cat pile to lie on, even for the simple expedient of conserving body heat, was downright impossible. When he tried to sleep alone, the constant cat traffic kept him up. He would be minding his own business in the corner of a room, and a cat would come up just to swat at and fuck with him. The only place he could count on a bit of rest was a small fenced-in backyard, the cleanest part of the property by far. He used this bit of open space to put his body through its paces, just to feel it out. There was much he could do, but much more he bafflingly couldn't. He tried to wiggle his tail and found it harder than expected. It could move just fine, but it wouldn't obey him when he tried to make it, say, stick straight up. He knew that was a sign of contentment, and he wasn't content. His claws, likewise, wouldn't come out on command, and only came out when he was full of bloodlust, chasing a bird, fearfully swatting a hostile cat who tried to muscle in on his patch of daylight while he slept. He wasn't as good as jumping or climbing trees as he expected to be, so he mainly just stuck to the ground. He knew from some sliver of human intellect still buried somewhere in the rag heap of his brain that the world ought to look much larger to him, being of small size, but when he looked up at houses, across streets, at cars in the distance, everything looked just as big as before. Whether this was a function of his new eyes or his new brain, he didn't know. Only the presence of humans made him feel small. He knew he should ingratiate himself to people. They would feed him. Maybe they would take him home and give him a warm place to sleep. He was cute now, lovable, pettable, or could be, but he found his treatment at the hands of humans just as spotty as he had before. Some stroked him in a rushed way and hurried off. Some kicked him. Small children yelled at him and pulled his tail. These experiences left their mark, and he couldn't make himself sidle up to humans the way he'd seen street cats sidle up to him all his life. He'd always assumed it was an act, self-interested, but it wasn't. Or maybe those words didn't mean the same for people as for cats, because he found himself unable to pretend he wasn't afraid. There was some layer to human consciousness that, when removed, made dissembling impossible. No matter how he told himself it would be better if he stowed his fear, he couldn't do it, and no one he ran into had the patience to work him through it. One day he detected a new smell coming off of himself. Suddenly the refuge of the backyard was broken by whale-eyed cats that circled like sharks. He realized he was a queen, and he was in heat. Of all the indignities, powerful chemicals were barreling through his bloodstream. Manic obsessions filled him, and unprepared he gave himself fully over to them, licking himself all over trying to quiet the crawling feelings in his skin, smelling all over, the butt, the scent glands, the swollen genitalia he was horrified to recognize as his. He smelled the sprays of Tom's, and they lit up his nose like flames. They saw him take note of their sprays and followed him. He tried to get away, hide up trees in the narrow gaps beneath dumpsters, and they tracked him and made unnatural guttural noises. They bumped into each other, screamed, hacked at one another. Fur and skin flew. He smelled blood and cowered. This kind of fear wasn't new to him. On the street, in the camps in the woods, things happened now and again. But he never did he suspect that his own body would betray him and give him up to the enemy. Instinct throttled in like in a grip of wire, and when a snaggle-toothed Tom muscled his way to the front, he felt his legs raise, raised to the victor, leaving that fragrant wet lump open and exposed, and he felt the Tom bite his neck, felt his teeth pierce and move around beneath the floppy skin there, and the cat's barbed penis pummeled him cruelly like someone had stuck a drill in there. Once the act was complete, those zombie urges retreated, and he swatted at the hateful attacker, aiming for eyes, throat, hoping to injure it, hoping it to leave it unable to menace another queen ever again, and dwelling in immiseration, at least until the carnage began anew and the zombie in his blood rose again. After getting pregnant, he avoided the cat house. He knew he wouldn't get a moment's peace there. He wandered up and down the cracked alleys, keeping his expanding flanks flush to the fence to avoid the bouncing pickup trucks. He stopped by the dumpster of the Mexican bakery, and though it tasted like styrofoam to him, he ate the edges off several stale loaves. Hunger still gnawed at him. He licked the wrapper from somebody's Subway. He caught a smell wafting in from somewhere. It stirred something in him. He wandered in the direction of the smell down an alley, up a gravel driveway. It was her. It was really her. God, how long had it been? How long ago had she thrown him out? Months, years melted into candle wax inside this cat's brain of his. She was making chicken wings. She had a special fry batter recipe, cornmeal and milk and egg and cayenne pepper and garlic and just a pinch of finger-crushed cumin seeds. He didn't know what all was in it, but he'd know the smell anywhere. Couldn't miss it with that cat nose of his. He began daydreaming, to just get one of those wings, to sink his sharp tooth into a wing and gobble the skin right down. She'd made him those wings, and then she stopped. Now she was bringing out a plate piled high with these wings out to the garage that he had once cleared the cobwebs, banged up with a hammer, poured new concrete in to fix the crumbled cracks and pits. He had no idea why he'd given all it up. Literally, couldn't remember. The garage had a picnic table in it. His old woman was bringing out a pile of chicken wings to a group of men sitting around it. His brain was too far gone into cat world to make out what she was saying to them. He didn't care either. The growing kittens inside him screamed out for nourishment. The scent memory of the chicken wings acted on him like a tonic. He had room for nothing else in his mind. The smell had him feeling more calm and more content than he had in weeks. While the men laughed and bullshitted around the table, he leaped up as sneakily as he could. He nibbled on the bony knob at the end of a wing. One of the men shouted to see him on the table. He pushed him off. Undaunted, he jumped back up again. He mistimed the jump due to his changing body and ended up clinging to the edge of the table, claws sunk into the vinyl table cover. Drinks on the table rattled and a couple spilled. The man who had shouted before shouted louder, picked him up by the tail and dashed him against the concrete floor he'd helped pour. Everyone else around the table laughed and babbled drunkenly. The man muttered something and walked to the end of the driveway, still carrying by the tail, finally throwing him down the storm sewer. It was dark and wet. His skull was cracked. Blood poured into his eyes. He could only with difficulty hold his head out of the dirty, leaf-strewn water. Blackness crept in at the edges of his vision, and he took comfort in the fact, or in rather than the hope, that when the darkness closed all the way in, he would reawaken in his old body, in his old blankets on that ledge beneath the underpass, with human ears taking in the muted and manageable noise of the traffic.
That was fantastic. Rudy and I both fucking love this story. And I think what I really love about it is, I mean, first of all, it was really appropriate for a Disneyfication theme, right? Because it's the exact opposite of what Disney does, where they take some animal, take all the animal instinct out of it and turn it into some cute sidekick or something. This is like watching the humanity disappear from someone, like, and be replaced with this like feral alien shit that, like, you know, like as someone who like has a cat and has had cats basically my whole life, you have no fucking clue like what's going on in there at any moment. And just like the, I don't know, just like the like wonderful way you watch someone's consciousness just completely dissolve over the course of the story. I will say one thing, and this is totally tangential, but I think you've seen The Simpsons before, right? You've seen the older.
Oh, yeah.
seasons of The Simpsons. There's one moment in one of the early, I think it's like a season 7 episode. It's like the Hank Scorpio episode where they're like advertising like his planned community, and there's this shot where like a homeless man is transformed into a mailbox as like, and this reminded me of that because it's that same sense of like what we choose not to see and the ways we like blind ourselves to that. Like, and here you have this guy who's obviously homeless, and we actually, like, as a reader, develop more empathy for him after he becomes an unthinking animal. And it's like, wait, what the fuck is going on there, right? Like that, like the like our willingness to like miss the humanity of someone like that, and our willingness to like extend humanity to like unthinking animals is really weird. And anyway, point is, I really love the piece.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tyler. Sorry for rambling there, but
Oh, I love that. Also, Tyler, that was incredible. And I really love your sentence spacing. I know that's like a kind of like not the best thing to compliment considering how fucking awesome that was, but it had to be said.
Thanks. I kind of changed it up for this story. I normally either err on the short or the long side, and I decided to like try and switch it up as much as I could.
Yeah, I know it is. It was really
no, this was a perfect length, you know, it really was. Right, yeah. Thank you very much, Tyler. Sam, you're up next. You.
Hello?
Hey, Sam, how's it going?
Hey, man.
Yeah, so you you sent me a message that was basically like, I might read this piece or I might read this other piece. I have 2 pieces, and last time I mischaracterized the piece you were going to read, so I think I'll just leave this to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to read that one. Let's see. This one's called You Didn't Hear It From Me. I'm not sure if this has been done before. I think it has. I don't know. If he asks you, you didn't hear it from me. I'm not saying don't tell him for any specific reason. I can't tell you why, but I don't want you to think he's mad at me or anything. He isn't mad at me or anything. We aren't beefing or whatever. If it slips out, it's cool. I was just asking. But also, if he finds out that you heard it from me, I didn't tell you not to tell him that you heard it from me. Not that it's a big deal if he finds that out. I can't tell you why, but it's for my own reason. It's private and important. Kind of a joke, but still, I can't tell you what it is. And if he asks why I told you not to tell him that you heard it from me after finding out that I told you not to tell him you heard it from me, you didn't ask and I didn't tell you it was for reasons that were private but important to me, but also kind of a joke. I know you tend to slip up with things like this, so I thought I'd ask you specifically, so this way you didn't. Actually, you know what? Don't even worry about him finding out you heard it from me, because I don't want you to think that if he finds out you heard it from me, that anything would happen. Or that if he finds out that I told you not to tell him you heard it from me, that something different but also unfortunate would happen. And also, don't want you to think that if he finds out you heard it from me, and that I told you not to tell him that you heard it from me, and that I wouldn't say why I didn't want him to find out that you heard it from me, but that I still indicated that the reason was private but important, and specified him not finding that out specifically, but also said that it was kind of a joke. That's something different, but even worse than all the previous entailments would happen. Don't think that it's a big deal if he finds out I told you not to tell him you heard it from me, and that it was for a reason that was important but private to me, but also kind of a joke. I bet it seems like the stakes are getting higher and higher each time. But there's nothing at stake if he finds out. Nothing at all. You're probably thinking that if he finds out I told you not to tell him you heard it from me, and that I had private but important reasons that are also kind of a joke for him finding out, that if he finds out, he might infer the reason incorrectly, and behave in such a manner as to cause a very long but predictable chain of events that would result in various power broker arrangements flipping in a specific way. Nothing like that. You're probably thinking that if he finds out and infers the reason incorrectly, that this specific shift in this large network of mutual power brokered arrangements suddenly flipping will cause a lot of issues financially and politically for us, as well as a lot of very important political people. Important people who would not take kindly to this shift in arrangement and trace the source of this shift back to you, and perhaps put your life in danger as well as mine. Incredibly powerful figures. I know you were reading The Power Broker recently on my recommendation, and you are at the part where Robert Moses is demolishing that low-income housing area by buying it up at an enormous price, and that he's doing this so that the Triborough Commission can stay below financial solvency, because the moment the Triborough Commission becomes financially solvent, it is required to pay off its debts and then dissolve legally. And you tend to, and I know that you're skittish now, and you tend to let things slip up when that happens. I'm going out of my way to let you know that none of that is the case, and there's no reason for you to worry about him finding out that you heard it from me, or finding out that I told you not to tell him that you heard it from me, or finding out that I wouldn't tell you the reason why I told him not to tell you that you heard it from me, but that I indicated that the reason is private but important to me, but also kind of a joke. It's really mainly a joke. I guess you can tell him you heard it from me. That's it.
That was hilarious.
I remember hearing about that trailer. Oh, sorry.
No, Eris.
I remember hearing about that trailer. I was like, okay. No, really.
Yeah. No, I love the way that piece is structured. It just, I don't know. It's great how you could like take something mundane, and the more you drill into it, the funnier it gets. Like the simplest request becomes hilarious by the time it's been expounded upon, like the 50th time or whatever. It just, I don't know, it got funnier and funnier the longer it went along. That was great.
I've just been like adding to it gradually.
Every time you said private but important, I like cracked the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the other like little like parentheticals in there, like when you mentioned the book being on your recommendation, like it communicates so much about this guy's ego just in those 3 words, and it's just so funny.
Yes.
So thank you, Sam. Thank you for sharing that. Dante, are you with us, Dante? You are up next.
Okay. Is it okay if I read something else than the thing I sent you?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't actually access the thing you sent me. The doc
Oh, okay.
was protected, so read whatever you'd like.
Here, I will change the settings on this, and here is the link to the thing I'm going to read.
Awesome.
Okay.
Works.
The penultimate. Hank might be the smartest crab in the tank. We have to escape, he says. Some of the other crabs open their eyes and look at him bleakly. Many stay asleep. Others fight, some fuck. Most grumble, complain, or argue. It's all just distraction from being piled on top of each other in a claustrophobic foreign space. There's so little room that the crabs are 6 layers deep in places. While the upper layers seethe an endless struggle, the floor of the tank is a near lifeless carpet of the depressed, the weak, those just waiting to die, and those resting until they can once more claw their way to the top. Hank can't believe he's trapped in this madhouse. We should form a ladder. No one responds. Listen to me. But they can't hear him because they never shut up. They speak in movement, drumming and dancing. They talk by gritting their claws and waving them in the air. They yell by stridulating, grinding a gastric mill deep inside their bodies to make abrasive little rasping squeals. If you knew how to listen, the sound in the tank would be overwhelming, even more so than the endless chatter of the diners sitting at the tables outside the tank. But even some of them can hear the endless clacking. We have to get out of here. They are going to kill and eat us. You really think you know it all, don't you, Hank? They have different theories, most of them half-baked, about why they're here and what happens to those who are suddenly lifted out of the tank, never to be seen again. Many believe the tank is a waiting area and that they'll all be taken to a better place soon. Whatever comes after this hell has got to be better. No, insists Hank, they are going to eat us, one at a time. One of them, maybe Agatha or Melvin, says, "You mean those blurry shapes out there? How could they eat us? It's not like they're turtles or octopi. Just look at these claws. Our armor is steadfast and true." Someone else chimes in, "Yeah, we're only here because they want to study us. I knew a guy who was taken to a world outside their world. He said it was like a tiny version of our world. All day, the soft giants would come and stare, and it was totally safe. No otters, no rays, no eels, no tides to wash them away. I bet this place we're in now is just a temporary waiting area till they take us to a place like that. Just wait, you'll see. It'll be the ultimate." Bryce, or was it Clay, says, "No way, bro," jumps off a rickety pile of crabs and midair yells, "It's the penultimate." Most of the tank erupts into applause at the stunt. Hank rolls his eyes. "Penultimate doesn't mean even better than ultimate, you dumb shit. It means second to last." Either Dora or Wilbur raises a claw and says, "We're getting pretty sick of your attitude, Hank. We're this close to making it to the big time. My parents would have killed for this chance. You try to frighten us with conspiracy theories and then tell us that penultimate means something meaningless? Second to last? Why would there be a word for that when we can just say second to last? Never mind the words," Hank yells, his claws waving frantically. "Look around you. We're killing each other for space. Does this look like a miniature version of our world? Where's the sand? The kelp? We have nothing to eat. Look beyond these walls. I'll bet you anything those soft land giants out there are sucking the flesh from our broken armor. Have you ever seen any one of them eating us?" "No, but we've only been here one day. Do you really want to stick around and find out? If we don't find a way out of here, we'll die." "But they come up to us and like point their stubby tentacles right at us," says Stan or Ron. "And why do you think that is?" Stan or Ron shrugs. "Because I'm the best looking?" Everyone but Hank erupts in the drumming, dancing, and clacking of laughter. "They are pointing at the crab they want to eat," yells Hank. "Why would they point?" asks Stan or maybe Ron. "Who tells somebody what they're going to eat? Wouldn't they just like stick their heads in here and eat us?" "They're like monitoring our health or some shit like that. They're getting ready to take us to one of those like mini worlds." An old geezer that's being jostled all over the tank opens his eyes and sighs. "They're called aquariums. I used to live in one." "Do you remember being held in a tank like this?" "I don't know. Maybe. It was so long ago. At this point, being eaten doesn't sound so bad. As long as I don't have to listen to you assholes argue all night and day. We all get eaten eventually. What difference does it make? If it's from an octopus or whatever put us in this insane asylum. Now, will you please shut up so I can sleep, for the love of God?" "God is the penultimate," yells Leon or Barry from across the tank, having managed to claw his way to the top of a churning horde in the corner. "God is the penultimate." The crabs heaving and roiling beneath him shout back, "God is the penultimate." Holding back his tears, Hank counts to 10 and tries to control his breathing. He tells himself ripping out their eyes and smearing the jelly across the walls won't help. A soft land giant's face appears on the other side of the tank and aims its stubby little tentacle, too short to be of any possible use, right at Leon. From the rippling heavens beyond the top of their water sky, two tridents appear, connected and swiveling on something in their middle. The two tridents descend upon either side of Leon, come together around his body, and lift him out of the tank. A long silence falls over the crowd, and then the crab who is directly beneath Leon raises an arm, squeals, drums, and dances. "God has taken Leon to his kingdom. God is the penultimate." The rest of the crowd, except for Hank, shout back, "God is the penultimate! God is the penultimate! God is the penultimate! God is the penultimate!" The new crab at the top of the heap that's dancing and squealing "God is the penultimate" might be named Gene or Carl. He commands the attention of the whole tank. They shout back everything he says. Everyone is now awake except for the droopy-eyed old geezer. Hank asks him what he's doing wrong. Hank asks himself what he's doing wrong. He's trying to save their lives, but they don't seem to care. All they want to do is chant "God is the penultimate." He turns around to face the world outside the tank, instantly becoming a stepping stone as others in their religious fervor scramble to be on top. He's sifted to the bottom and the shifting weight of the zealots above him bearing down on his shell. He peers out into the world beyond, struggling to make sense of it all. Soft land giants gather around large, unnaturally angled shapes, bend their lower tentacles and become shorter until the round, fleshy part of their midsections rest on other strange shapes. They hold yet other shapes up. Sometimes distinct sounds rise above the constant nonsense that seems to correspond with the movements in the holes in the land giants' heads. Other land giants bring more shapes, and the bent giant stabs these newest shapes with small tridents, and then lifts small bits of matter up to the holes in their heads. What else could this be if not eating? And why were they being held in an eating place for land giants if not to be eaten by them? Hank falls asleep to the broken rhythm of angsty feet tap dancing on his back. When he wakes, the world outside has changed. Before, the light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Now it's cast in shadows fragmented by small flickering lights that sit on every surface. The loudest, most constant sounds are still the clacking and unceasing hum of something at the top of the tank. Hank is still at the bottom, being trampled by the frenzy of those above. From the state of the crowd's hysteria, it seems like several other occupants have been taken to claim their penultimate prize. Then he sees the unmistakable silhouettes of a crab being lowered in front of one of the bent giants. Like some demon, the giant rips off one of the legs, snaps it in half, and gouges out the steaming flesh with his trident. The giant then sticks the crab's flesh into his head hole, which closes and then seems to grind around its contents. How is that head hole not a mouth? Hank has seen all he needs to see. He struggles to turn around and yells, "Come here, everybody, quick!" The crowd ignores him or can't hear him above the clacking and squealing of God is the penultimate. In a sudden burst of strength, Hank manages to throw 4 crabs off him at once and then climb them like a stairwell. He dances as loud as he can, drumming and stridulating with all his might. "Listen to me! I need everyone to look at what is happening behind me. This is your penultimate. We are being served up and devoured." He finally has their attention. Half of the mob turn away from whoever the newest preacher is and trample each other to get to Hank's side of the tank. The few that make it immediately begin complaining, "Where? What are we supposed to be looking at? I don't see anything," etc., etc. And then either Dusty or Gale sees the soft giant lift the fallen comrade's corpse in what could be mocking jest. The cadaver might now bright red and with 3 missing legs. The leering ogre rips off a claw. Dusty or Gale shrieks, "Murder! Murder! Hank is right!" Half the tank erupts into a terror-stricken frenzy, but the preacher and the current incarnation of this inner circle either can't see it or just refuse to believe it. The tank immediately splits into 2 polarized opposing factions. 1, those that didn't actually see anything but believe Hank. 2, those that didn't bother to look but still don't believe Hank. The already virulent atmosphere is now poisoned by the mounting political hostility, and neither side is willing to entertain the slightest compromise or conciliation. Those that believe Hank are labeled non-believers. Those that believe that God is the penultimate and that penultimate means like ultimate but way better, label themselves believers. Both sides wave their pinchers in the air, drum at each other, and prepare for war. A waiter asks the cook if the crabs are unusually frisky tonight. "Nah," says the cook, and he is right. In every crab tank on Earth, this battle has always raged, but only the old geezers remember this. The non-believers huddle. A plan is hatched. Their best fighters advance to the front where the tank is divided. The most agile retreat to a corner deep behind their front lines. For hours, the 2 sides maintain their formations, squared off and facing each other in cold silence. When the last of the giants has disappeared and the world outside becomes dark, the most dexterous non-believers start to stack on top of one another, forming something between a staircase and a ladder. As soon as this structure is stable, Hank begins to climb. The believers see what is happening and an order is issued to attack. "Destroy the non-believers. The penultimate God must be defended with the penultimate punishment." The offense starts cautiously. Old friendships are not immediately cast aside. Nobody's quite sure what to expect. There's some tentative pushing and shoving and even a little wrestling, but it's almost reassuring in its harmlessness. This whole time on the front lines, a believer named Lyle has been watching his ex-girlfriend Anne, deep behind the lines of the non-believers, beating himself up and trying to figure out why she went over to the other side. Then Gus, the non-believer soldier directly opposite him, turns around and faces her. It passes over her face and is gone in a flash, but there's no mistaking the look of love. Lyle's blood begins to boil. Before he realizes what's happening, he's mounted Gus and ripped out one of his eyeballs. There is a petrified hush. Anne's face is a frozen mask of horror. Hank hangs by one claw, mid-crab ladder. Lyle releases Gus's eyeball. It bobs to the top, gets caught in an eddy, and spins above them. An eternity goes by. The only sound is the bubbling of the tank. Anne's blood-curdling shriek is immediately swallowed by the hideous stridulations from the entirety of the non-believers. Revenge is all. The soldiers abandon all reason to the berserker's instinct. In slow crab motion, the carnage unfolds. Limbs are ripped out. Blue fluid clouds the tank. Shells are ruptured. More dismembered eyes are jerked about in the violent cross currents caused by the mayhem. After a brief advantage from the non-believers, the believers, in their greater numbers and religious fervor, gain the upper hand. Their bloodthirsty infantry push deep into the non-believers' defenses. "Quickly, yells the non-believer at the top of the ladder. His flailing almost causes Hank to lose his tenuous grip and fall back into the pandemonium. For fuck's sake, be still. This top of the ladder crab grabs Hank and lifts him with such panic force that Hank is hurled over the side. He flies beyond the edge of the table that holds the tank and shatters upon the hard tile floor below. Bluish innards spill out of his splintered shell. A mouse on the far corner of the restaurant tiptoes up and investigates. Hank's last sensation is the mouse slurping from the fount of his insides. The tank is now plummeted into absolute chaos. The evacuation threatens to unravel. Nobody knows what's happened to Hank. He was supposed to help the next comrade up and out. Betrayed, they howl. The top of the ladder crab, who doesn't yet know Hank's fate, yells, "Come on, anyone, climb up this damn thing." Either Tanya or Kay appear, and the three climb up 4 crabs, but fall down each time. Someone else climbs over her, but pokes an eye out of the middle crab, who throws him back down. A half dozen other non-believers try and fail. In a brilliant outflanking maneuver, berserker believers pour in from both sides of the broken non-believer front lines and proceed to dismember pacifist, bystander, and warrior alike. Fragments and chunks float in all directions. Vision is near impossible, so cloudy is the water with butchery. Gills are clogged. Latent cannibalism is realized and expressed for the first time. Linda, tortured by a sudden greed for the taboo, sucks half of Andy's brains out of a wound in his head. Through no will of his own or anyone else's, the old geezer finds himself rising haphazard on a tide of retreating non-believers and hoisted to the top of the chaos. The top crab grabs him like he grabbed Hank. "Gentle, gentle," says the old geezer. The top crab, using all his muscle control this time, delicately places the old geezer on the narrow rim of the tank where he balances and panics, teetering from his belly. Below, the mouse looks up and then goes back to sipping on Hank. While the old geezer shivers and clings to the rim, another retreating non-believer is being hoisted over the side. The old geezer sees a large surface around the corner of the tank where the light and pump are housed. He tries to drag himself in that direction, but it's nearly impossible. One false move and his limbs will fall uselessly to either side of the tank. The top crab, a hero really, despite the mishap with Hank, tosses Sue, or Pam, over the side with just enough force that she lands safely on the table. He tosses over yet another non-believer with such grace and skill that they land on top of Sue or Pam. A few more iterations of this and there is now a crab ladder on both sides. The evacuation gains momentum. Soon all surviving non-believers are outside the tank. They shout at the old geezer who clings perilously to the rim. "Come back, turn around," but he can't turn around. He looks over the edge and sees the mouse with his face buried in the opening of Hank's shell. He lets fly a terrified squeal of repulsion, helpless to resist the horror dance which makes him lose his grip. He falls but lands safely on a crab waiting on the table below. The last of the non-believers have now escaped the tank. Euphoric with murder and gore-thickened water, the believers pound their claws on the glass from within, their shrieks and gyrations promising punishment in this life and the next. The pump groans under the burden of the pollution. The non-believers begin to dangle one another over the side of the table. Plump and drowsy from gorging on Hank's innards, the mouse rolls over on his back to watch the show. Crabs are so weird, he thinks. I mean, do they have any idea how nightmarish they are? Still, even he can't help but be impressed as one by one these clumsy, clacking little monsters lower and pass themselves down upon each other and then begin stacking themselves into a descending escalator. Word of Hank's fate spreads like lightning. No sooner are they still on the floor than they descend upon the mouse, slashing him to soggy little ribbons. The mouse's fluids combine with Hank's as the non-believers slip and slide around the hate-slickened tile, helpless to resist the rapture of vengeance. When there is nothing left of the mouse, they stop. They look at each other, heaving and drooling with death. They look around at the dark stillness. They can still hear the furious clacking of the believers above, the struggling pump. They all look to the old geezer. What next? Tell us how to get to the aquarium. The old geezer looks at each one in turn, aghast, and then starts grinding and beating his claws against the floor in laughter. "He's lost his mind," they say. "Pull yourself together and lead us out of here, old man." The old geezer sighs, turns around, and waddles off into the darkness. Assuming he is leading them, the others begin to follow. He comes to a glass door. His eyes barely protrude above the metal frame. Beyond the glass is another strange world, lit by unfamiliar light that throbs from a great distance. Are they just trapped in yet another tank? The other crabs catch up to him. Ron or maybe Sue says, "Well?" The old geezer turns around and sees them, waiting for instructions. "Well, what? I don't have any answers." "But you said you were once in an aquarium. Will you leave me be?" They finally give up on him and form a special council. A new leader is appointed. She decides that the non-believers will divide into 2 search parties. One goes this way, the other goes that way. The new leader is pleased. This is the penultimate plan, she says. The old geezer loses the last of his cool. Idiots, you just said that this is the second to the last plan. They ignore him and embark upon their reconnaissance. The old geezer is once again left alone. The light outside begins to increase, coming from even higher up now. He succumbs to a heavy sleep until he is awoken by new vibrations. A soft land giant is on the other side of the glass. His stiff upper tentacles carry two large shapes. His body folds over and he places the shapes on the ground, releasing them from his soft claws. The giant straightens back up and sticks something shiny into the door. There is a rattling and the door swings open wide. The old geezer can hear the others clacking and drumming in argument somewhere off in the dark. He calls for them, but they don't respond. The giant has folded over again and is picking up the shapes. The old geezer senses that this is his one shot at escape. He runs out of the opening beneath the giant, whose peripheral vision is now blocked by the shapes he is holding. The old geezer doesn't know where to go, but the feel of this new surface is more familiar, almost like wet stone. He runs into the steadily brightening horizon. A tremendous gust of wind almost lifts him into the air, a sensation he hadn't felt since he was a child, clinging to the rocks above tide pools with his family. Using the last of his strength, he throws his weight into the gale and fights his way to some kind of edge. Far below is a misty churning mystery. Everywhere is the familiar smell and sound of home. Unseen gulls cry overhead in the fog. He feels drawn to whatever lies below, and he's also just tired. He's seen enough to know that overhead that he's had enough of his kind. He would love to be just left alone. He actually wouldn't have minded being eaten or even killed in battle, just so long as everyone shut up for once. He braces himself for the unknown and propels his body over the edge. He falls and falls, but his descent is eased by the wind that carries him far from where he leapt. When he hits the water, the impact is jarring, but nothing is broken. He sails down through the nutrient-rich waters of a kelp forest. By the time he lands on the sandy floor, he is reinvigorated. This is nice, this is clean, he thinks. From over a rock, an army of unfamiliar crabs appears. They surround him. Who is the great one who is descended from the heavens? He is the messenger of the penultimate one, just as I've been saying all along. All praise the penultimate one. All praise. Please no, begs the old geezer. He starts to wave his claws feebly in the air and then collapses. The crowd closes in and lifts him above their heads. All praise the penultimate. No. They carry him over the rock from whence they came. All praise the penultimate. End.
That was fucking glorious. Also, the perfect story to read on Good Friday, I think.
Thanks.
No, that was hilarious. It was wonderful. It was really fucking engrossing, and I love the fact that we now have two like profoundly bleak, existential, and talking animal stories read today.
That was one of the reasons I changed my story.
Oh, it's great. It was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dante.
I was so into it. Thank you.
Thanks. It always feels way like 100 times too long when I'm reading them, but
No, it's so propulsive. You know, everyone was just kind of dragged along with it. You know, yeah. But thank you so much. And
thank you.
next up is Gabriel.
All right. It's called Wino's Shadow. Shout out to Unity for quality control on this one. No one really wants to know anybody in Los Angeles, not who they really are beneath their masks. That's why the antisocial types go to happy hour, to escape, not be bothered. It's a quirk native to that city. Even with drink specials, an LA bar can't attract a crowd at 5 p.m. No one wants to be caught dead early to the nightlife. If you're not fashionably late to anything, it looks like you had nothing better to do. Like maybe you didn't put on enough makeup. She gave herself one last look in the rear view of a new Toyota Camry parked and ticketed in the alley of the Powerhouse Bar. Ugh, honey, you got so sweaty out there, she whispered, applying more foundation that kept turning into angel food batter on her cheeks. Inside, Carter Campbell sat at the bar on his second Greyhound at 516. He swiveled his head around, surveying the room through its dim lighting, trying to zero in on the usual suspects, the real alcoholics who needed the 2-hour window just to deal with the gravity of nightfall. Where's that one thing tonight? He asked the bartender. Excuse me? You know, that, I don't know whether it's a guy or a girl. Listen, if you're talking about Amy, have some fucking class and don't call her an it. If someone has the skill to wear a miniskirt and heels as well as Amy does, well, I'd call that a woman. End of story. Carter put his palms up in center. Man, I apologize. I didn't mean any disrespect. It's just hard to get used to. There's nothing to get used to, said the bartender. He mimicked Carter's palms up, shaking them into insulting jazz hands. At the end of the day, Amy's more welcome here than you are. Hell, she practically lives here. Barely a beat and the doors swung open. I told you I was trouble. Amy's arms hung up in crucified pageantry at the entrance. Eyes wing-tipped, black beehive, red lipstick on a triumphant grin relishing in the sparse applause from the 3 other regulars. The bartender clapped the loudest. Amy, go good out there, I take it? Honey, you know I'm no good, she said, striding to the bar. But yeah, you could say I did good. Her hands scrambled and emerged from her purse, fanning out a peacock tail of cash. All right, baby, said the bartender. Here's your victory cola on the house. Now, just because I had a good day, don't go sneaking booze in there. You know I don't like that shit anymore. Never. Not until the day you tell me to again, Amy. Carter smirked. He was starting to get it. He even had a copy of Back to Black out in his car, one of his favorite albums. He caught Amy's eye, motioning her to waddle over. Hey, I've seen you so many times, it's just now dawning on me. You're trying to be Amy Winehouse, right? Amy scoffed. Ugh, trying? Honey, just because you have a profound spiritual and karmic connection with someone doesn't mean you're trying to be like them. Oh shit, sorry. Didn't mean to offend. Well, you bloody did. Oh, you got the British accent and everything? Nice. So you're like transcontinental maybe, she said, but my personality is so large it jumps the fucking ocean. So of course I'm gonna have a British accent. So wait, where are you from originally? I'm from Amy, baby. You could say she gave birth to me. Okay, fine. But what state? State, she rolled her eyes. Amy is a state of mind, a state of fashion, state of the art, a state of just being. Carter realized he was out of his element, his curiosity making a fool of himself. He focused his attention on finishing his drink instead. Amy stirred her Coke, took a bit of the maraschino, and swallowed the whole thing, quickly realized she was starved for attention, not candied fruit. Okay, fine, Nosy, I was born in Kansas City. Carter was distracted, ordering another Greyhound. I said I was born in Kansas City. Oh, sorry, he said, facing her again. That's cool, what side? Well, for a while there, it was the suicide. He got nervous. Well, whatever side, it's a great border city. Oh yeah, all the doctors call me borderline, that must be why. Always on the edge, baby. Carter smirked. Amy is hilarious, he thought, but also totally fucking serious, isn't she? Right on, so what brought you to LA, Amy? You know, just to be myself, really. Her accent had gone full slobbering Cockney. She launched into press interview mode. Once I really started coming into my own in KC, I had a harder time being who I really am. See, I prefer to be the loudest one in the room. I started running out of places that would let me. I was kicked out of every bar in town. I was putting all the sass in Kansas. It was a lot of work. But they didn't know real talent when they see it, so I left. They didn't deserve me anyway. Got it, but why do you even hang out in bars? Looks like you don't even drink, he said, pointing to her Roy Rogers. Oh, that's just for now. It's only because Amy is in trouble. She's trying to get sober for real this time, you know. I don't want to be a bad influence on her. You mean the real Amy Winehouse, right? Amy looked up, then down. I mean both of us. When I say Amy, I speak for two black hearts that beat as one. Carter was really getting it now, coming to acceptance. He didn't quite know what to say next, but Amy took care of the silence. See, the powerhouse here is like my office. You usually see me here every other hour to take a break, unless I'm really moved by the spirit out there. Out where? Oh, our little runway, right in front of Man's Chinese, sometimes in front of Hollywood and Highland. Another constellation formed in Carter's nodding head. He knew that pseudo-iconic scene where the impersonators preyed on gawking tourists, hustling them for a paid photo op. There was the arrogant, glassy-eyed Superman, the Batman with anger management issues, a couple rivaling Marilyn Monroes who split the AM/PM shifts just to stay out of each other's wigs, then the near-perfect Captain Jack Sparrow, who was ravenously popular since Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides had just come out that May. Aha, got it, he said, throwing back a hearty gulp of the Greyhound. That's some stiff competition over there. How does a Winehouse compete with Jack fucking Sparrow? Oh, we don't. I hang to myself and just sing my little heart out. Not like those fools and underoos have any real talent, so I kind of stand out. The crowd I get might be a little smaller, but it's much hipper. And I'm still alive, a real live pop star. You know, a lot of them are taking those photos and telling people they really met me. Ha, right. If you're putting one over on people, why shouldn't they? Carter began raising his glass to Amy's. She appeared to be obliging his toast until she kept raising it to his face. Honey, the only thing I'm going to put over on anyone is this drink over your head if you don't stop disrespecting me. Whoa, hold on, stop. Listen, I'm sorry, really. He changed his approach. He wasn't playing the game as well as he thought. I haven't even had the chance to tell you what a big fan I am of yours. Amy blushed on cue. Oh, is that right? What's your favorite song? Well, let's just say I've actually been to rehab and I've gone back to black. So those two songs cut particularly deep for me. You good now though, right? She said. Her first signs of genuine care told him he had broken a wall down with his opening up. Yeah, I think so. Booze helps until it doesn't. Ain't that the truth? No matter what you love it too much, it's a losing game. He wouldn't dare call her an act at this point, but Carter was impressed with her lines, the way she was flipping Winehouse song titles into little bits of nihilist philosophy. Is it even an act when you're always on? He wondered. So where do you live, Amy? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Like, what part of town? She whipped her head to the side, bangs veiling her eyes. I live in me, she said, cocking one eye through her jet black hair. I live in Amy. Wino's my religion. Therefore, my body and clothes are my temple, my church, my shelter. Carter ordered another drink, downed it in 2 gulps. Even with the lush cushion of vodka drowning his mind, he was disarmed. Amy was sort of breaking his heart. He noticed it was sprinkling outside against the windows, saved by the rain. Well, speaking of shelter, I should be getting home before that rain gets too crazy, he said, tonguing the last drips from his eyes. I feel you. I'll walk you out, she said. Carter paid his tab, offering to pay for Amy's. The bartender smiled, one hand gesturing. Nah, that's sweet, but we got her. The two emerged into the alley into a mounting downpour. Damn, said Carter. Guess June gloom turned into June hysterics, huh? Sure, but my name ain't June, baby, said Amy, winking. You know that by now. By the way, what's your name? Oh, it's Carter. Carter Campbell. All right, Carter Campbell. I'm going to call you Cece. Ha, that's cool with me, A-Dub. Carter's smile quickly grimaced. Oh, man, what the fuck? He grabbed the ticket off his windshield wiper. Oh, no, I saw that on my way in. Didn't realize it was your car. I just fucking bought this thing, too. She noticed the Back to Black CD on his passenger seat. Oh, yeah? 2011, huh? Well, you might just get some pennies from heaven then. Just like the rain, tears gonna dry on their own. Huh? How much is the ticket, Cece? He unfolded the flimsy paper. Fucking $60. She reached into her purse, flipped through the flush stack. She extended 3 crisp 20s in his hand. What is this? No, I can't let you do this, Amy. You didn't let me do anything, Cece. It's already done, she said, winking with a smirk. She turned around, shielding her towering bump from the rain with her purse, began walking off. Hey, can I at least give you a ride somewhere? Her one hand gestured. Nah, that's sweet, but I got me. Carter leaned against his bumper. He stared at the 320s, dumbfounded by the kindness, yet unsettled by it. He had a good-paying job downtown, yet an eccentric homeless person just turned him into a charity case. He didn't feel above it. He felt unworthy. He thought quick. She's going back to work the tourists in the rain like this. I'll somehow disguise myself and just give it back to her. He stuck the ticket back on his windshield. He ran to the corner, saw she was just crossing Highland. He sprinted to the corner store, one of those cheap tourist shops, grabbed a blue Dodgers umbrella, handed the clerk one of the 20s, grabbed the 3 5s back. He walked outside, looked to the right. He could still see her pink outfit darting through the foot traffic, crowds scrambling to escape the rain. Carter frantically unbuttoned the umbrella as he ran to catch up with her. It bloomed open like a morning glory as he crossed Highland, right in time. He noticed Amy stopping a block ahead in front of the mall. She grabbed a glass jar from a planter and posted up against the marble to get in her groove. Carter leaned his umbrella forward to conceal her potential view, but her voice made its way to his ears, the opening line of Tears Dry on Their Own, the perfect tune to garner sympathy in the rare LA downpour. All I could ever be is you, is the darkness we once knew, and this deep regret I had to get accustomed to. What her voice lacked in tonal accuracy, she made up for it in volume. Slightly more baritone, but in the pocket. In fact, Amy had more control and anchor to her voice than the real thing, a brassy sweep of devoted emotion, not about to be drowned out by the monsoon hitting the pavement, nor the booming thunder above. By the time she kicked the chorus in, Amy had drawn a crowd of 5 people as Carter walked into shrouded view. He lifted his umbrella to get a view of her tip jar, took a few steps forward, and put all 320s back to its source. He was just stepping back to give the voice the space it deserved, when another voice behind him catcalled Amy, mocking her performance. It was a young couple, day drunk, heckling Amy through an amoral meat grinder. She stopped. Excuse me? The hip couple laughed. Sorry, but you're actually too good. It's not really accurate. What is that supposed to mean? She said, hand on hip. Oh, you didn't see Winehouse's performance last night? The one from Belgrade? No, I was busy. Well, she fucking blew it, the guy said. She's either back on the sauce or back on dope or both, but she was out there just out of it. Couldn't sing or even remember her own words. He's trying to say she's fucking retarded, said the girl, her guy covering her mouth. The couple began a shameful struggle until the girl wiggled out of his grasp. No, I want to show this bitch how she was acting on stage so she can learn. The girl stomped up to Amy, bellowing cruel moans into her face as tears welled up, her red lips wincing, her persona crumbling. Carter panicked behind his own blue wall of coverage. What he meant to be a chivalrous act had become one of cowardice. He bailed, conflicted, convincing himself an anonymous payback was more vital than defending her dignity. The more the rain beat down, the harder he scolded himself, all the way back to his car. On July 23rd, Carter found himself in his usual seat at the bar of the Powerhouse, doing what he had been doing every week, consoling Amy for a recent bad streak that began a month prior with that fucking drunk white bitch. I should have just fucking hit her, but instead I hit the bottle, she said, lifting her rum and coke. Now look, still fucking hitting it. Here, hit this, said Carter, clinking his glass into hers. Listen, give yourself a break. Nothing wrong with having a damn drink. Just quit demonizing this stuff. That's when it gets its real power over you. When was the last time you've even paid for one anyway? People love you, Amy. We love you. You just got to live where the love is. She flashed him a ghost of a smile. Ah, thanks, Cece. You know I appreciate that. It's not even that I feel like I'm slipping, more like I'm sliding away. Puh, I'll say, now you're quoting that Paul Simon dork instead of our beloved Winehouse. Careful, he said, a joking glare that finally got her to laugh, though she couldn't maintain eye contact. Hey, Amy, can I ask you why you keep looking over to that table in the corner? She did that thing, opened her mouth, but no words came out. She shook her head, loosening her lines. Oh, you mean Jim and Cisco right there? Oh, I guess. I didn't know you knew them. Seems like every time they're here, they're giving you stink eye. Oh, they're just so I don't talk to them anymore. Long story, don't worry about it. Here, watch my drink. I'm going to take a leak, he said, tapping his tumbler. Amy nodded, finally making eye contact as he got up, whipping her head right back to Jim and Cisco. Once she got their attention, she held up a 20 like ringing a bell. They smiled, motioning her over. Carter entered the one-stall restroom that reeked of vomit and wet tobacco, only accentuated by the mentholated urinal cake he was pissing on. He had switched to beer since he was in for a long night at the bar, making his stream longer than usual. He checked his phone, right to Twitter, his compulsive habit even when he had a spare couple seconds. That's all the time it took to see it. Amy Winehouse, dead at 27. He nearly dropped in his phone, his private world colliding with international headlines. The thought of Amy, both of them, scared him into paralysis as he held his cock, which was quickly turning into the world's tiniest violin, as they say. He snapped out of it, put it away, zipped up his pants, walked through a thick psychic gravity as he made his way back to the bar where he'd have to tell Amy the bad news. It was already on the TV. She was already crying. The bartender was already giving her another rum and coke, turning the volume up with the other. Jim and Cisco's yellowed teeth already clenched. There was nothing to say that a silent embrace couldn't say better. Carter walked up to Amy, put his arms around her, his chin in her nape. It only made her bawl harder. Devastated, then embarrassed she was being such an open wound, she removed her face from her palms. Keep them coming, 2 more, she said, her voice quivering strangely, a reveal of buried baritone. It was the first time Carter or the bartender heard her drop the accent. Whatever you need, Amy, just let us know. Carter and the bartender's sentiments overlapped into blurry inflections, submitting to the malaise. I need this to not be my fault. Why do I feel like this is all my fault, she said, throwing back the stiff drink, her Adam's apple undulating over the flood. Wait, why would you say this is your fault? You wouldn't understand, she said. Despite her slurring, Carter knew it was the truth. Amy, you want to get up front there and do a song? Asked the bartender. I thought I wasn't allowed to anymore. I'm the boss here and I say you can, just for tonight. Let it out. Hell yeah, Amy, this is your moment. Do it for Amy, said Carter. He was rubbing her back for both encouragement and concern, the way she kept slurring. What's that? What are you trying to say? I said everything I fucking do is for Amy, idiot. Fine, I'm going up. She threw her purse on the bar, wiggled off her stool. She stumbled once, nearly turning her ankle in her high heel. The Powerhouse had gotten crowded since Carter's bathroom break. Heads turned as she made her way through the crowd, up to the front by Jim and Cisco's table. She hesitated, knowing they'd be in the front row for this. Fuck it, she said, forgetting her thoughts and escaped the confines of her head. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. A sudden deer in headlights, seeing how many people were there, transfixed on her, on what was about to happen. She never had this much immediate attention in front of Man's Chinese, and right now there was no more competition. She was the only Amy. She began to belt, a combination of two songs, stumbling over the lyrics, forgetting which one she meant to do. Then she stopped, confused what she was doing up there. You got this, Amy, we got you, hollered Carter. But she didn't have it. She merely had herself. Her and her sexy nurse Halloween outfit she bought at Hollywood Toy and costume that she dyed pink, written Amy in Sharpie above the breast pocket, her bumpet unraveling like a comet trail lost its luster. She tried again, but all that came out were determined moans before the only decipherable line, I died 100 times, then a burp. What the fuck is this? Someone yelled. This is in such bad taste. The poor woman just fucking died. Have some respect. Yeah, real class act, bitch, someone else said, twisting the knife. It ain't an act, said Cisco, raising an eyebrow. He signaled Jim to the door that they should be leaving, like now. Amy deflated in tears, too weak to defend herself, much less stand. So she tried walking, but she moved too fast and fell to a kneel. Ha! At least she brought someone to her knees in here, someone yelled. Hey, fuck off, you piece of shit, said Carter, running to peel her off the floor. She put her arms around him, a fleeting sense of safety. She smirked as he puppeteered her back to her feet, leading her back to the bar where she put her head down, resting on her arms. You all right? He whispered in her ear. She nodded her head slowly, wishing she could tell him thank you, that no one had ever stuck up for her like that he was her best friend, that she wished he would just kiss her. If not tonight, then maybe one night, but for now, she was just so tired, so no words would come out of her mouth. Just let her sleep it off, the bartender said, scrunching his nose. Carter's one hand remained on her back for comfort, the other with the bartender's remote. He toggled between news channels, seeing who had the latest developments, who was best at picking at her bones. When he realized a half hour had passed, he leaned his head down into Amy's, whispering her name, again and again. Eyebrows slanted, he quickly put his ear to her mouth. Hey, she's not breathing. The bartender got on the phone, hit one button for 911. The fuck? She only had like 5 drinks. His eyes darted the room for Jim and Cisco, those vulture motherfuckers. Without hesitation, Carter pulled her down to the floor, put his mouth to hers to begin CPR. For a second, her consciousness stirred, just long enough to know she was finally getting what he always wanted, long enough to make one last wish that in another life, there could have been another way.
Oh, wow. That was really, really fucking good. It was incredibly touching.
Thank you.
You can tell I'm speechless, and when I can't even ramble, you know it's fucking good. But no, like the arc of that piece is incredible. The first third is so hilariously funny. The wordplay, the dialogue is so sharp, and by the end, you're so attached to these characters, and it's just absolutely fucking brutal. Like,
was it obvious that she bought drugs off of Jim and Cisco?
I didn't catch that, but then again, I got more wrapped up in like the emotion of the piece, and I didn't quite pick up that bit. But maybe some of the
I need to work on.
I thought it was obvious that she had bought drugs from Jim and Cisco. I mean, as soon as you mentioned like a precise date, I kind of knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But you know,
it's meant to be like she bought some kind of pharmaceuticals. But yeah, I need to work on that part a little bit, I think.
I thought that was a major part of the plot, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But you know, a piece is really good when you know it has ended. You're like, damn.
Wait, say that again, Harris.
Well, like piece is really good when you're hearing it out loud, so you don't know when it's gonna end, but then you know it when it. You know why I'm talking like this. So.
I think
I knew how it was going to end, like that like she was going to, I don't know, I could feel it coming, I guess is more what I mean to say, that she was gonna die with Amy Winehouse, but
Yeah.
it was still fucking great. Like the anticipation of that was what really made it for me.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I also like I knew where the story was headed. The particular detail of how she got the drugs didn't hit me. But then again, like I said, I was kind of like I don't know. It fucking I don't know. It was the
Just
emotional
just
like
sipping
journey
your
to
iced
be
tea.
so
Just
riveting.
sipping your iced tea.
What's that?
No,
No,
it's all right. It's just water today. It's not even iced tea.
really?
Hmm. But no, that was wonderful, Gabe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Griffin, you're up next.
All right. So you got the link, right, William?
Yep, I do. There you go.
Yeah. So this is another piece I'm reading by a friend of mine, Sophia, who can't be here tonight because hold on, let me check our DMs. The last message she sent me, she said she was having a red hot heat sex foursome with my nemesis and her wives
Okay.
plural. So
Is this for it's a trans day of visibility.
hey Josh,
So dumb, by the way. Like,
Josh,
you fucking clock.
Joshua Sherman, I prefer to be invisible. Thank you. Thank you for outing me to the chat. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, so Sophia's having some sort of wild lesbian foursome and can't be here to read, so I'm reading this for her. This is from the Three Portland's Augur Horospecs.
Griffin,
The
sorry to interrupt you.
oh yeah.
Could you possibly put Sophia's Twitter handle in the chat? I want to make sure that
Oh,
she
yeah.
gets credited on Twitter. Sorry about that. It's all your.
No worries. So this is Australian Rules Drag Racing. Australians Rule at Drag Racing by sports correspondent unofficial Sophia Haugen. If motorsports were sexual partners I have had, drag racing would be my high school boyfriend, Glenn Robertson, on prom night. Disappointing, over far too fast, and one of the critical tipping points that pushed me away from milquetoast bisexuality into full-on lesbianism. You might think that the analogy got away from me there at the end. You'd be wrong. You see, I grew up in a small, shitty town in eastern Washington, and the only thing for a teen to do other than smoking meth and getting pregnant was watching the guys who spent all their time and money fixing up classic muscle cars cruise up and down Main Street. One of these guys was not in fact a guy. Her name was Kylie, and she was exactly the smoking hot butch mechanic that phrase conjures in your mind. I broke up with Glenn approximately 18 hours after he ruined my corsage with his premature ejaculation, and 3 hours after that, I found myself in the backseat of Kylie's car, having an orgasm-induced out-of-body experience. Kylie and I broke up when I went to college, amicably, and we still hook up on occasion when I'm visiting home while single, but my lust for the sport never abated. Unfortunately, normal drag racing, however sexy the drivers or fast the cars, still doesn't do it for me. This came up while my editor and I were getting absolutely hammered in one of Portland's seedier dive bars. We were discussing our more annoying kinks, and between shots of Ultimate Wormwood Princess Death Bastard 7, a Japanese absinthe so potent it's banned in every US state and most Canadian provinces, my editor was about to launch into a 40-minute monologue on why he commissions fetish art, dragons fucking trucks. Editor's note: every time I threaten to remove this sentence, Sophia comes into my house and steals one of my socks. So I've decided to just own it. Yes, I think that there is nothing more erotic than a giant flying lizard engaging in sexual relations with a diesel-powered American pickup truck. Neither I nor my psychologist has any clue where this fetish came from. My theory is witchcraft or possibly sorcery. When a friendly cyborg saved our collective sanity score by interrupting to inform me, in an absolutely impenetrable accent, which may have been Glaswegian by way of Reykjavik, that in Australia they do drag racing the same way they do football. Suddenly, violently, and all over the place. I was intrigued, of course, and pressed him for more. He told me of a land far across the Pacific, a land of billabongs and bunyips and bogans, where the ocean is warm and the beer is warmer, the home of the one and only Australian Drag Racing Association, a league for whom such petty concerns as physics, secrecy, and morality were the trifles of lesser minds. I had to go see it. Anything lesser would be a betrayal not only of the journalist's oath, but of my own younger self, experiencing a rhodonosis in a modified Hyundai. The next morning, neither my editor nor I remembered any of this, of course, but I thought ahead and recorded the entire conversation on my J. Jonah Jameson Jr. journalist tape recorder, an officially licensed Marvel product canceled halfway through production when the Taiwanese factory making them was found to be a front for a massive heroin smuggling operation. I own 3 out of the 65 that were not seized and destroyed by Interpol. Since my editor had given verbal permission that night, I didn't even need to ask before I took the company card out of his wallet, he had passed out on my couch as usual, and hopped out into PDX to grab the next flight to Oz. Editor's note, it was my personal card, not the company card, and Sophia's real lucky that I'm such a merciful God. I landed in Sydney on the second day of a 2-day hangover, having spent the first half of the 15-hour flight dry heaving into a series of air sickness bags. The young Canadian couple seated next to me graciously shared some of their emergency poutine with me, a gesture so thoughtful and appreciated that it almost made me reconsider my intense, irrational hatred of the Quebecois. But as we landed, they pulled out matching fleur-de-lis rosaries, and their bastard French prayers, their false Catholic God, reminded me of their true nature. I cursed them with boils as we filed off the plane. In spirit only, of course. If I end up on the no-fly list, I want it to be for something more exciting than unlicensed witchcraft on a commercial airline. I used a cheeky little chameleon charm to skip customs because I had an extra bottle of Ultimate Wormwood Princess Death Bastard 7 tucked away in my carry-on, and in Australia that stuff is legally classified as a chemical weapon. Finally, I emerged into the bright Australian sun and met my contact in the ADRA. I had a 3-hour layover in LAX, and I used that time well. Turns out that Aussie drag races are very active on Void, and I actually have fans among them. Believe me, I was as surprised as you are. I assume that you are all using this article to wrap takeout, or perhaps for papier-mâché. My contact, a gentleman who goes by the nom de sport 3 Thong. I asked him the origin of his name, and he explained that it refers to his preferred racing gear, and forgive me if I don't do an Australian accent, it would be terrible. 2 thongs on my feet, 1 thong on my junk. Mercifully, when I met him, he was wearing pants. Well, those zip-off cargo shorts with one of the bottoms unzipped and the other still on, mostly pants. He picked me up in a trashy old ute, sort of a hybrid pickup truck sedan thing that I don't think exists anywhere else, for good reason. The things are hideous. The make and model was, I shit you not, the Subaru Brumby. TT calls her Brenda. We drove off, thrash metal blasting on the sound system, headed straight for the track. The closest ADRA track to Sydney is 2 Black Butts, an extra-dimensional space accessible from both Black Butt, New South Wales, and Black Butt, Queensland. Those of you who live in the best goddamn city out of the world may think this is a little on the nose, maybe an upside-down world copy of our favorite Anglo-American miniverse, but names have always had power, and dimensions like 3 Portlands are more common than you'd think. Like the mime-infested catacombs of Paris, Texas, which connect to the ones in France if you go deep enough, or the Other London Bridge, which connects the Londons in Ontario and England with 8337 London, a hollow asteroid with a thriving art scene. Or, of course, Alexander's Mausoleum, the burial place of the original himbo himself, accessible from any city named Alexandria. Why do you think he kept naming things after himself? It wasn't just because of his massive throbbing ego. Apparently, I had to shut it down for a bit because of a Yowie 3 Thongs explanation. You know, Bigfoot, yeah? Imagine if Bigfoot was just like a real mean cunt. A Yowie infestation. But they cleared them out by introducing cane toads, which has always worked really well for Australians and could never be a problem in the future. By the time we got to Black Butt, we were both stoned out of our gourds. TT had a whole jar full of these massive blunts, as thick around as your middle finger and almost as long, and we've been passing them back and forth the whole way down from Sydney. I think we blazed through like 4 or 5 of them in an hour and a half, and of course we kept the windows rolled up. There was just this pungent, sticky fog enveloping us and coating our mucous membrane with THC every time we inhaled. Don't worry, Brenda took care of the driving, and she only had a few hits. Editor's note, for legal reasons, the Augur Haruspex cannot endorse operating a motor vehicle while under the influence, or operating under the influence while a motor vehicle. Anyway, we drove it to this clump of woods behind a suburban strip mall and collapsed out of one of the doors in a puff of smoke and took a quick nap there on the grass, just for an hour or two until a few more of TT's mates showed up and it was time to actually head to the track. To get through to Two Black Butts, you need to build a ring of eucalyptus branches around whatever you want to transport and then set it on fire. Yes, I know the optics of setting a bunch of stuff on fire in Australia are not the best right now, but this was like April. I'm not good with deadlines, and I'll be damned if I make any edits because of a massive climate catastrophe. Since eucalyptus burns very easily and the way doesn't care if you soak it in gasoline first, the only limit to how much you can translate is the size of the ring. By the time we actually set the fire, we'd move into a parking lot, don't worry. There are about a dozen people and almost as many cars packed into a ring made of 2 full trunk loads of branches. I was still pretty stoned, so I didn't even notice when we made the transition. I think I was back in Brenda taking another nap, but I'm not really sure. When I regained awareness, we are at the track, surrounded by an impenetrable wall of trees. The first few races were, unfortunately, for mundane cars, a little bit of an amuse-douche or whatever it is they call that first little bite in fancy restaurants. Don't let you take the whole plate of, no matter how tasty it is. I wasn't really paying attention to these, partly because, as I've mentioned, regular drag racing just does not do it for me anymore. And partly because the airplane chicken parm took its revenge and forced me to spend a solid 20 minutes in a porta potty contemplating homicide. But I survived my bowel movement, as did everyone else, and returned to the stands just in time for the real attraction to start. One of the first racers to actually use magic was my boy Threethon. He had, as promised, stripped down to his flip-flops and panties ensemble, plus driving gloves and a helmet for safety, and I could now see the reason for his near nudity. Every square inch or centimeter, I guess, of his skin, other than his face, was covered in some kind of intricate magical tattoo. I asked him about him afterwards. Yeah, well, I got them up in Thailand. This monk bloke will do it for free, but you gotta like swear a vow to give something up. So like this whole arm, that's Macca's from a Backer swore off lager. And then he made me swore off all of the booze to do my unit. Said I had kind of cheated with just lager. Left leg was Warcraft. It's like I'm wearing full Kevlar, yeah? Totally impenetrable. Still got to worry about internal injuries and all that, but it's not like race gear would stop those. And I don't want to wear clothes because I don't want to ruin my trousers and shit, yeah? Thongs are cheap. Hardcore. You'll probably be surprised to hear that TT's dragster is good old Brenda. Inside that ugly old ute, TT has installed a custom 5-cylinder Abramelin Ulam turbine capable of converting infernal resonances into pure kinetic energy at a remarkable degree of efficiency. To start her up, TT has to summon a demon into the containment vessel, the heart of the engine. I took a demonology class back in school. I didn't pass because I spent like 60% of every class trying to flirt with Ash, one of the hot goth demonology majors. Her full name was, no joke, Ashtaroth Ragnarok Anti-Christensen. Apparently she was abandoned in the woods of Norway as a baby, where she was found and raised by a black metal band who were there to shoot a music video. She wore corpse paint to class, or maybe her face just looked like that. But his methods were like nothing taught in the hallowed halls of Deer. They mostly consisted of swearing, kicking things, and occasionally poking at parts of the engine with a set of lead and silver wrenches. Eventually, the engine had been subdued to TT's satisfaction, and he tossed a live chicken under the hood and slammed it closed. There was a horrible meat sound and a puff of feathers, and then the thing roared back to life, spitting black fire from the tailpipe and stinking up the whole track with sulfurous fumes. His opponent was an enigma in black leather. From her carbon fiber helmet to her steel-toed boots, not an inch of skin was exposed except for the tips of her fingers, peeking out from her fingerless driving gloves. She rolled up in a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda, its tasteful lavender exterior concealing an interior upholstered in Lisa Frank-esque rainbow cheetah print with gold snakeskin accents. She stole it, I later learned, from an exotic animal dealer. The upholstery was made from real rainbow cheetah. As soon as she stepped out of the car, I couldn't take my gay little eyes off of her. I won't go into my thoughts in detail, but suffice it to say they were graphic, and she kept the fingerless gloves on. I was interrupted from my reverie by the announcer, introducing the race and the drivers. And in the infertile category, on the right, driving a classic sport, you know him, you love him, it's Three Thong. The applause was almost deafening. My boy TT was a clear hero of the people. And on the left, a newcomer to our fair shores, hailing from the far-off exotic land of northern England, driving a 1970 Cuda, the Rookie. The crowd cheered for this rookie almost as loudly as for Three Thong. Either she had a reputation here already, or they were just in an excitable mood, brought on by fast cars and free beer. The racers waved to the crowd and climbed back in their cars, starting another round of cheering, and then started their engines. Well, TT's engine was already started, so Rookie started her engine. And by started her engine, I mean she stabbed a syringe into her arm and mainlined some sort of effervescent orange liquid, then open palm slammed a cassette into the tape deck. The opening riff of Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood blasted at the windows, and the car transformed. Starting from the driver's door, a ripple moved across the surface, transforming the glossy metal into rough scales. Horns burst outward from the headlights, curling upward as they stabbed into the hood and drew blood. The grille parted, revealing a gangrenous maw filled with jagged teeth, a warty tongue squirmed between them, dripping motor oil spittle onto the track below. The tires were black bone, the bumper was grey chitin, and inside, ensconced in something that now more resembled a liver than a seat, was the Rookie, eyes glowing the same orange as the demon drug now running through her and the car's veins. Never seen anything that sexy in my goddamn life, I tell you what. Anyway, once the transformation was completed, they announced the standard audio marks, get set, go deal, and then they were off. The race, from start to finish, took about 13 seconds. Most of the next section is going to be from a bunch of phone videos and eyewitness accounts. See, I'm a real reporter that I gathered after the fact. I missed most of it because I was planted by the starting line, and I couldn't fall down the track because I'm slow as hell, and my psychic remote viewing abilities were on the fritz because of all the weed, and because I don't have any psychic remote viewing abilities, as far as I can tell. Like with demonology, I did take a parapsychology class back at Deere. Unlike with demonology, I actually passed it despite my utter lack of talent. It was graded on a curve, and I was the only one who didn't get failed out for cheating. Everyone else accidentally formed some sort of gestalt mind meld during the final and had the exact same answers in the test. Guess I'm just lucky like that. Strap in your seatbelts, or don't, I'm not your mom, I hope, and get ready for some hardcore racing action. Both racers roared past the starting line, spitting black flames and sulfurous yellow smoke from their tailpipes. Neither had a clear lead, and it took only about a second and a half for them to both resort to outright sabotage. Three Thong took out a blowpipe for who knows where and shot a dart at a near supersonic speed toward the Rookie's open window. She caught it, blew him a kiss, and then stabbed it into her own neck. As far as anyone can tell, this just made her go faster. Some funky drug interaction with whatever other crap was already in her system. In response, the Rookie drew some big fuck-off hand cannon and just started blasting away at Three Thong. He deflected the shots with his palm before they could damage Brenda's bodywork, started casting some sort of hex. The track in front of the Rookie started undulating as if there were worms beneath the skin, and someone's phone camera even captured a tentacle beginning to rise from the asphalt. But the Rookie's car leapt up and levitated about half a meter off the ground, and TT gave up on a spell. And that was when the Rookie pulled out the rocket launcher. She slapped the cruise control button, probably unnecessary given the amount of track left, but a good dramatic flourish, and leaned out the window, firing a single rocket-propelled grenade basically point blank at TT's hood. Brenda's engine was reduced to a smoking wreck, and with the Rookie leading by about a quarter car length, it seemed the race was over. But Three Thong still had some secrets tucked up in his eponymous underpants. From a bag on his passenger seat, my bag in fact, he pulled out a bottle of nothing less than Ultimate Wormwood Princess Death Bastard 7 and poured it into a small funnel hidden in the center console. Then he hit a very sexy red button that I hadn't been allowed to touch in our drive down here, and a massive rocket engine lifted up from Brenda's truck bed. A cocktail of liquid oxygen, illegally potent absinthe, and black lamb's blood surged through the rocket's ignition chamber, and Brenda put on one last burst of speed as the racers neared the finish line. It was a close one, and everyone held their breath as the car skidded to a halt, leaving burning trails of rubber and bone on the asphalt. But the photo finish showed Brenda's cattle catcher cross the line a hair's breadth ahead of the Rookie's insectile bumper. The rookie was a gracious loser. Once the drugs had been flushed from her system, she extracted herself from her slowly recovering car and shook Three Thong's hand. In hindsight, the handshake lingered for a little longer than was strictly necessary, and there was quite a lot of suggestive eye contact, but I was too distracted by visions of fingerless gloves dancing through my head to notice. I briefly introduced myself to Rookie, and she agreed to a quick interview later. I did specify in private with a wink, but I think she was looking away and didn't notice my attempt at innuendo. Any alternative would require me to reevaluate my assessment of my own incredible lesbian charisma. My ego is far too fragile for that sort of self-reflection. Editor's note. I've known Sophia for just over 4 years now, since she was a student journalist at Deer. In that time, I have seen her get dumped 6 times, ghosted an additional 8, and turned down by no less than 24 women. Whenever this fact is pointed out to her, she claims it's because of an ancient sapphic death curse placed upon her by a vengeful specter. Anyway, after the track was cleared up for the next race, I went in search of her for the promised interview and found her behind a row of porta potties. There, parked next to the rookie's magnificent set of wheels, was Brenda, rocking back and forth suggestively. Her windows had been mirrored, some sort of privacy charm, no doubt, but every so often the charm would be briefly disrupted by a hand pressing up against it. Some of the hands were covered in mystic tattoos, and others wore black leather fingerless gloves. I spent the rest of the day moping and got a ride out from another racer, Pommy Pete, who spoke in an upper-class British accent so crisp it had to be fake. Pete drove an Aston Martin, which had originally been owned by the real James Bond, not the one from the films. I didn't believe him, of course, but it did have an ejector seat, so who's to say? Pete took me on a breakneck tour of Australian rules drag strips, and the wonders we saw there could fill a whole newspaper's worth of sports columns. A ghost-powered bone wagon howling through the streets of Perth circa 1881, an actual phoenix bursting out of a crashed Pontiac Firebird and turning a 100-meter circle of salt flats to black glass. A race between a pair of identical twin cyborgs, the winner choosing a piece of remaining flesh from the loser as a trophy. But despite my protestations, there is a limited amount of space dedicated to the noble art of sports journalism in each issue of the Augur Horospex. Editor's note, this rule is put into place because of Sophia's tendency to send us novel-length fan fiction about women's soccer teams and long lists of horse racing results she claimed were from alternate universes, but I'm pretty sure she made up to fuck with us. I mean, who would name a horse crypto-fascist spinal monster? So I can't fit it all here. Further episodes of Sophia Goes Down Under can be found on my secret blog, which is only visible from public library computers during prime-numbered days.
Oh God, I love the world building in that piece. There's so many like hilarious details. Just it's like I just like what's the name of that the classic Looney Tunes cartoon like Wacky Races or
Wacky Races, yeah.
But like but demonic.
Not least of all, I think I was.
Do you have the car?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
The CUDA! Yes!
Oh shit.
God damn, that's serendipitous.
Hey, Josh, say something so you appear on the stream. Hold it up.
I'm trying, but William has muted me, I think, in the group chat.
No, you're muted.
Is it not appearing?
No,
you're good.
You're good. We can see it now.
Yep, we see it.
Yeah, that's for visual context. I knew collecting these things would pay off.
Wow.
Oh God.
Oh goodness. That's awesome. That was an awesome piece, and the Hot Wheels connection is awesome. And I said this in the chat, but I'd love to see this video game like more Twisted Metal or some shit with like a cult fucking shit.
Hell yeah.
Like a Twisted Metal style gameplay. So good.
Yes. Thanks, Griffin, and thanks, Sophia, for me. Another classic piece from her.
That was, by the way, that was amazing. That was, yeah. Sorry, just Griffin. Yeah, very good. And I feel bad for my, sardonic mention of the day, right?
As you should.
But I thought it was funny.
Moving on. Next up is, I think Rudy put this one at the dock. Instead of a name, he says name with symbols in it. So I'm going to guess that guy running face with a smiling
Yes, that
face
would be
of
me.
some kind, arrow pointing down, eye. Hey.
Hi. You nailed the pronunciation, by the way. That's exactly how it's pronounced.
So there's a link here to...
Yes, it is a link to Kent's Lectures on Homeopathic Materia Medica, which I am going to be reading starting from a random page. Now, if everyone just at total random can pick their favorite digit and chuck it into chat, the first 3 digits are going to select the page that I will start reading from.
Sounds good to me.
We have 685, phenomenal. So let me skip to 685. Now I am going off a physical hardcover here, not the digital version that has been linked in chat. So let me just go to 685. All right, now I'm just going to start mid-sentence. Drinkers often remain sterile also, and you must stop their coffee. Amenorrhea with ebullitions. Chancres on the female genitals. Aged women have denuded genitals, rawness, soreness, and false granulations, which are always bleeding, burning, throbbing and itching in the vagina. Itching of the genitals from the contact of the urine. It must be washed off. In children, boys or girls, the urine burns after urinating, and they are always carrying their hands to the genitals. Little girls have acrid leukorrhea, causing burning and itching and much trouble. Phlegmonious inflammation of the genitals, boils and abscesses at the menstrual period, little elongated abscesses along the margin of the mucous membrane and skin, painful, aggravated by walking, forming the flow and breaking after the period. This with itching causes great suffering. Does anyone want to give another go of digits, please? So we've got 9 and 1 and 14. Well, let's go 911. So 911 here. 911. Minds often need sulfur. The patients look like sulfur patients. They have the aspect, and when their symptoms are localized and call for other remedies, you will get no good action from these remedies until you give them a dose of sulfur, after which they go on improving. Some believe this is due to the fact that there is so much sulfur in the coal. We may theorize about these things as much as we have a mind to do, but we do not want to fall into the habit of antidoting the lower potencies with the high. Only use that method as a dernier resort. When there are no symptoms to indicate the remedy, then it is time for us to experiment, and then it is justifiable only when it is carried on by a man of the right sort, because such a man keeps within the limit. He knows how to give his remedy. Such a man is guided by the symptoms in each case, so far as symptoms speak out. In inflammatory conditions, a purplish appearance of the inflamed parts, a venous engorgement is seen under sulfur. Measles, when they come out with that purplish color, very often require sulfur. Sulfur is a great remedy in measles. The routinist can do pretty well with the disease in the pusatilla and sulfur, occasionally requiring aconite and euphrasia. Especially will sulfur modify the case when the skin is dusky and the measles do not come out. This purplish color may be seen anywhere. In the erysipelas, in the sore throat, often on the forearms, legs, and face. The dreadful effects of vaccination are often cured by sulfur. In this, it competes with thuja and malandrinum. Okay, another round of digits, please. 588. All right, let's skip straight to 588. Hopefully now you're understanding why I chose to read from this particular book. It is a phenomenal instance of incidental, just brilliant, brilliant prose. Okay, so reading from 588. What were the people saying? Oh, okay, cool. 588. Choeric movements. Complaints are worse after coition. The weakness, emaciation, and anemia, and tubercular tendency are strong features of this wonderful antisoric remedy. Edema of the limbs and dropsy of serious sacs, complaints aggravated after eating, emaciation, wasting diseases with putrid discharges and putrid stools, fainting spells, fasting ameliorates, fatty tendency of muscles and organs, aggravated after cold drinks, milk. This remedy has been used in gangrenous condition. Parts become black, septic, putrid hemorrhages, and great prostration, all forms of nervous weakness, hypochondriasis and hysteria, inflammation of glands, complaints from loss of fluids, orgasm of blood. blood. The pains are aching, pressing, stitching, tearing downwards, paralyzing, chronic neuralgia, ameliorated by gentle motion aggravated from cold, one-sided paralysis from a gradually increasing weakness, paroxysms of pain followed by exhaustion. Pulsation felt all over the body and in the limbs. Symptoms are often one-sided. Many symptoms come during and after sleep. Twitching of muscles and jerking of limbs, ulcers with putrid discharges, offensive catarrhal discharges. Walking fast aggravates, walking in open air aggravates, warmth of bed ameliorates. Complaints worse in winter. Too many cures have been made by the followers of Schulze to permit this remedy to remain unexplained. Good provings are found in our literature. The high and highest potencies have served the best, and it should be used in a single dose. I hope you all enjoyed that.
Holy fucking shit.
You ignored my number.
I'm sorry, which number was that?
It was number 4. You said 588, but it was actually 5848.
I think it's probably dependent on
also
whichever
saw
order the...
588.
Yeah, it's probably dependent on whichever they all come in.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's different in England or wherever. So.
I'm actually from Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we put our numbers backwards is why.
Similar countries. Sorry.
That was so good. Oh my goodness. The performance was lit.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. That was amazing. That was fucking spectacular. I'm gonna have to now. I'm gonna have to read the whole fucking thing. How many pages is it? Several thousand.
With my hardcover, it runs to 1,107 pages.
Holy
Though that is including the
shit.
index. And so the physical copy that I've got actually has on its front cover a stamp that says supplied by the New Zealand Homeopathic Society Incorporated, P.O. Box 2939 Auckland. It also has $19, which was the price that I had to purchase it for, as well as the name Jackie Stoddard, who was the previous owner, and her address and phone number, which I won't list here. It says on the following page that it's the Indian edition, which was published by Indian Books and Periodical Syndicate. And again, we have a post office box from a place that probably hasn't existed for about 100 years. And preface to the first edition, we have 2 pages from James Tyler Kent, which he wrote in 1904. So again, I could read through this entire thing if I wanted, but I imagine that would probably go on for a touch too long. So again, just a smattering of completely randomly chosen pages, but I assure you, you can genuinely go to any page in this manuscript and they all have similar quality prose in there. It's phenomenal.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. Next up, Rudy, you actually had a piece.
I thought you were before me. Either way.
Yeah, I'll let you do yours first because I think yours is a little shorter.
Okay.
And you you left a link. You left a note in the document. Don't link. So I'm not going to share the link to it.
Well, I just meant on Twitter. Don't link it because this is actually for the Bear Creek contest there, the prose contest, and I haven't submitted it yet, so I'm not 100% sure like what their policies are. I don't think Stuart would give a fuck, but I didn't want to link it on Twitter. Just
right. That makes sense. I just put it in chat then.
It's, by the way, I tweeted recently, fuck yeah, I got rejected by Go City, but it was not snarky. I think that we should all share our rejections. I love seeing friends rejected. I like seeing people rejected. So just Rudy, if you don't make it, I love to see it. I love to see your failure.
Well, Stuart's rejection letters are works of art in themselves.
I heard that.
Not that I would know. I've never gotten one.
Damn. Yes, I'll just sorry, I'm kind of coughing here. This one is called Scratch Me Plenty. The theme of the contest was Scratch Me, so yeah. This has a couple of HTML links in it. Sorry for the PDF, but yeah. Wake up to scratching. Serotonin void is palpable. Satanic bears one end. want to eat my garbage dump existence. Descend stairs into hell. Curse Lincoln log double wide. Pressurized cabin. Little house where quaint, isolated, and unkempt meet and shake hands. Redneck Yalta. Ephemeral particle wall divides shitting, sleeping. Couch, a cigarette cushion where some still burn. Table, full of dog or bear-eaten homework. Mom yelling at me about bears. Do fucking something. Turn, look outside. A ripped chair on the screen. Turn, face Mom. She's trembling, offering me the shotgun. Accept it, load slugs. Delete her face. Bears stirring. Gutturals intensify. Reload. Fire in warning. I'm rushed. Melee. Consumed in minutes. Minutes are eternity. Eternity is gratuitous slow-mo. Bear Creek, a cosmic slowdown town with speed limit signs in years. Descend deeper. Corridors of lockers. Endless loops of gray metal and Addison Wesley tricks to save effort. I'm loaded for bears. I find sporty acolytes. First round of hexes demolishes me. Spirit sundered by women. Psychic abuse. Their curses are lists of inadequacies, but set inverted. Glowing hot epithets eviscerate my 2D character. I'm angry. Demonic faggot Talgath Foley finger fucks my eardrum. Retaliation is lead heavy, flint shit. I'm split between rifle and shotgun like kids with separated parents between visitation. And Daddy Slug wants more head explosion time. 308 Mommy tumbles again and again into messy, meat gooey affairs that terminate painfully. Every femjock killed, armor against growling earth signs, lingering in every periphery. Squinting because of low arousal, low T, or lower health. Choose one. Descend deeper. Me. Crimson image on the news screen as gravity from the reporter's intonation red shifts my form. I rave forever at the event horizon of shit hitting the fan, looping in syndication. Slow, troubled youth languishing. Victim facing coverage is a scorecard. 2D hooded figures with bright eyes, colorful designs. Even posed with my weapons, they still look cooler. Even in death, even their jibs bounce purposefully. Even kills, 38%. Even items, 20%. Odd secret, I'm human. Bears Olu late. Descend deeper. Bear Creek High library footage. Lockers give way to library stacks. More tricks. Famished bears peek between shelves. Walking tall, aimless, armed. These boots are gonna walk all over you. These boots were made for walking. That's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. These boots were made for walking. That's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. These boots were made for walking. That's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. These boots were made for walking. That's just what they'll do. One of these days, these boots are gonna walk all over you. These boots were made for walking. That's just what they'll do. One of these days. Descend deeper as mental ruts become external ruts, causing me to fall through the world. Rusty nails or claws shred me, falling into a hall of mirrors. Everywhere I look, flat affected me's bunched together, tessellating and reteslating against a background of the last thing I saw before plunging. Dirty boots, mine probably. Surrounded by self, no way out. Would take 13 years to shoot all these fucking mirrors. Scratching on an industrial level. 9-inch nails on a chalkboard. Teeth ache. Racing thoughts take a knee in solidarity with pain. Luciferian chant ambience. My face contorting. My face taunting, haunting. My face is tepid. My face is disaffected. My face is iconic. From Badger Lane to Bear Creek High School to the standing room only James Aikman Funeral Home. My face is speaking. To win the game, you must kill me. In defiance of heretics, hexers, doomers, boomers, shitwads, tightwads, nimrods, tools, bullies, bears. In defiance of my face, I swallow pride, metal, and win the game. Wake up to scratching. And that's it.
Fuck yeah.
fucking wild. I love how, like, I love how wonderfully the like Doom aesthetic and the Bear Creek aesthetic fit together. Like, at no point was I like, oh, this isn't Doom or this isn't Bear Creek. It was like, yeah, this is Doom, this is Bear Creek. Those two worlds have some like shared demonic undercurrent that you really find in this piece, and I think it's great.
Yeah, one thing I decided I was going to do a Doom piece in Bear Creek, and I really wanted to do that. But it really,
fit.
it is. But what really crystallized it is this. It crystallized kind of around the Doom Eternal trailer that shows the Revenant handing Doom guy the shotgun, then he blows its head off. Yeah, I can link to the video later. But yeah.
The link is in the doc, right? Oh no,
No, that's
the music to accompany.
That's the music one.
Is in the doc, right?
That's the actual link to that one, but yeah, that was what kind of crystallized it.
No, that was awesome. That was awesome. And also, of course, the obligatory like school shooter aesthetic weaved in, where it's like, are these bears? Are these bears? Are these demons? Or are these your classmates? You know.
Also, I have one thing I wanted to call out is a reference to the Acolytes, which is a reference to Sophia's piece. The Bear Creek Acolytes, you know, of course, going to shoot, he's going to shoot the jock. So cross team, pretty good target.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. Thank you, Rudy. I guess I think I'm going to read a piece of my own tonight. This is something I wrote a few years ago, and I think I read it last Good Friday during the plague reading, but I don't think I've read it on A Misery Loves Company yet. Basically, it's a Holy Week themed piece, and I wrote it over the course of like for those of you who aren't Catholic, which I assume most of you, Holy Week is what is it? It's Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and then Easter. And basically it goes from Jesus's suffering in Gethsemane through his death and then through to his resurrection. And this is a sort of piece that I wrote, kind of reflecting on that, kind of reflecting on my own like lost faith or whatever. I don't know. I'm over explaining it. I'm just gonna fucking read it. Okay. Prologue. The man who was Legion testifies. I used to live over there, beyond those hills, in the catacombs, and sleep on the soft earth of fresh graves. I used to throw myself on the ground and eat the dirt they buried the dead men in. And then I would go out into the town with my mouth full of dirt and scream and scream. I would scream nonsense. I would scream words that no man understood, that I myself did not understand, until the men of the village came and chased me back to the tombs with sticks. But now I only have one story that I can tell, the story of my deliverance. From today until the day I die, I must tell every man who I meet about how I was saved, because that's what he asked me to do. Go, he said, and tell them how much I have done for you. He will let me do nothing else. Even if I wanted to disobey, I could not, because my mind is sterile. I have not had an original thought since the spirits left me. Some nights I go out and swim in the water off the cliffs, in the same bay where the pigs threw themselves and drowned. And I will open my mouth underwater and swallow as much of the sea as I can. Where else could the demons have gone, after all, but into the water? I do not think they could have drowned. But it is no use. I'm sane now. My mind is quiet, and I would wish to die, but he has also given me the gift of eternal life. Thursday, Gethsemane. I apologize for this part because it's written like a play or a screenplay or something, so it's going to be very awkward to read. A dry and uncomfortably warm spring evening in Jerusalem, soon after dusk. Following a cheap meal, Jesus and his disciples have gathered in a garden at the base of the Mountain of Olives and intend to spend the night there. Jesus has taken Simon Peter aside and is speaking quietly to him alone. The other disciples are seated on the ground, watching the conversation. They say nothing to each other and are obviously straining to hear what is being said, but even in the stale, windless air, the words are too soft to reach their ears. Eventually, Jesus, visibly distressed, turns away and walks into the trees and out of sight, while Simon Peter throws his hands up in an exaggerated display of frustration and returns to the others. James, what was that about? More prima donna bullshit? Simon Peter, he says I've rejected him or I'm going to reject him. Apparently I'm not loyal, not really. After all this fucking time, all these nights, sleeping on the ground, the lepers, the whores, that shit with the pigs, after all of it, now I'm not trustworthy? I watched him throw that hissy fit in the temple, make an ass of himself and all of us at the holiest of all holy places, and I didn't say a fucking word. You saw me. There he was, ranting and raving in front of the priests, in front of the elders, in front of the women, in front of the children, with that whip, that weapon in his hands. And I didn't even gasp. I didn't say, okay, buddy, calm down. You're making a scene. I didn't do what I should have done, what every ounce of my dignity and good sense was begging me to do, and say, you know what, screw this, and just walk off then and there. No, I stood by his side like a moron. And now, fuck me, I'm another traitor, I guess. Philip, yeah, another. Several of the disciples laugh at this. Andrew spits on the ground. James, Judas had the right idea. Just get up and walk off. Don't say anything. He was so cool about it too, so collected. That bastard would have really been drinking his own blood if he had called me a traitor right there at the table in front of everyone. Thomas, what was that about anyway? The cannibalism stuff, I mean. James, isn't it obvious? We're all parasites. We're literally eating him alive. Hungry ticks hanging off his immaculate body. Andrew, literal fucking ticks. Fleas and bed bugs, every one of us. While they speak, John lies down. He stares absently at the starless sky, oblivious to the conversation around him, and eventually falls asleep. Thomas, I don't know. I thought maybe he was threatening to kill himself. It wasn't what he said exactly, but the tone he used. There was something so, fatalistic about the whole thing. And now he's off crying somewhere. You saw his face a minute ago. He's unhinged. And he always seems so, well, not fragile, but insecure. Like he distrusts himself. Like even he is afraid of what he'll do next. Simon Peter. Sorry about that. Simon Peter. Manipulative. That's what he is. You don't threaten to kill yourself. You do it or you don't. When you talk about your own death that way, you're trying to get something out of someone. It's conniving. It's what you do when you want something, but you're too cowardly or weak to ask. Or you know the person won't give it to you willingly. James, it's some real faggot shit is what it is. Matthew has been listening silently but intently to this conversation. His expression, as usual, is serious but sadder than at dinner. When he does speak, he sounds weary, exhausted. Matthew, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm a sucker. The humiliation of being a tax collector isn't exactly like they say. Nobody was spitting on me in the street. No one threw any stones. No, it's more like this sort of quiet condescension that follows you around. This subtle clucking in people's tones, a constant tisk, tisk, tisk that's never quite vocalized. You're not an outcast, but you're isolated. And when you feel that way, to have someone approach you, to have someone choose you and outright say, come with me, it's vindicating. It's thrilling. But now I look back at that and I think, could he see my vulnerability? Did he know how badly I needed to be wanted? And did he take advantage of that? I wonder if that's the heart of this con. I used to think I was a smart guy. I'm educated, after all, sophisticated, worldly wise, not a fisherman or a day laborer, no offense. But maybe I've been taken for a fool. Like I said, a sucker. Philip, a tool. James, no, pussies. That's what we are, because we're still sitting here bitching like we always do. Just like last night. Tomorrow morning, we'll get up and we'll follow him into some new fiasco. And tomorrow night, we'll be sitting here or somewhere else on the bare, dirty ground again, bitching. Thomas, maybe. Philip, oh God, here he comes. The disciples quickly lay down and pretend they're asleep. Enter Jesus, unkempt, his face stained with tears. Jesus, are you asleep? You couldn't stay awake with me for 1 hour? Get up, look. Enter Judas, followed by a crowd. Okay. Sorry. Friday, the good thief in paradise. I didn't know him before they strung him up next to me. I had never heard his name mentioned. I had no interest in politics or religion. Prophets and revolutionaries are born losers. They are caught in a vicious cycle. They think that their bad luck is a result of their righteousness, that indifference is the same as persecution. So every time they get robbed, they take it as proof of character. When the house wins, they assume the game is rigged. Not that they are victims of their own poor judgment. And rather than become smarter players, they yearn to flip the tables over. Sometimes, if they can get enough sore losers together, they even do it. But ending the game will never be the same as winning it. And that was my first thought. When they dropped that pole in the ground and we were face to face for the first time, I looked at him and I saw the congealed blood running from the thorns in his hair and smelled the vinegar on his breath. And I heard the centurions at our feet casting lots for his dirty shirt. And I thought, this man is a loser. The pain was so bad then. And I'm not a man with a high pain tolerance, having spent my life taking judicious risks, or so I thought, and avoiding the unnecessary silly agony that more ambitious, less sensible men find in love and work. But in that moment, looking at the face of a man more fucked up than I was, the throbbing in my wrists and ankles left me, and the burning hell of slow asphyxiation relaxed long enough for me to appreciate a moment of wonder at this sucker and the undisguised innocent torture in his eyes. Here was a man who never had a poker face, and that was very nearly the moment of my damnation. But then I heard the mob. They were jeering him, taunting him. If you are God, save yourself. If Elijah is really your pal, see if you can score a ride in his heavenly chariot, etc., etc. You've heard this part before. And it wasn't what they were saying as much as his unwavering confidence, it wasn't so much that what they were saying as the unwavering confidence of their tone that gave me pause. They were so sure of themselves. His divinity was an impossibility to them. And that's the other great mistake of suckers. They think in terms of the possible and the impossible. Reality for them is concrete, it's real. But reality's reality is a lie. Reality is a probability. Reality is odds. And sometimes, if your potential losses are small enough and the pot is rich enough, it pays to bet on a supposed impossibility. And hell, in that moment, what could I have lost that wasn't already being choked from me? The losers had their hands around my throat as it was. No, they had their arms down my throat. Their fingers were tickling the sacs of my lungs. So I looked at that sign above his head, and I took every derisive, sarcastic word at face value. I turned to that battered, naive face and looked in those eyes, the eyes of a patsy as much as of a prophet, and I said, "Forgive me, Lord, forgive me, save me," or something to that effect. And I won myself the key to the gates of heaven. Not only that, but I was the first one through the door, not Moses, not Jeremiah, who suffered so much for his self-righteousness, not even Christ himself, who was off bailing some old Jewish saints out of hell, I guess, me. And if you think, I don't deserve to be here, if you think I didn't earn it, then I urge you to sit across from me at the table there, and I'll deal. I see they give you a golden harp on the way in. I'll take it as collateral. Just 2 more days. Saturday. Pontius Pilate sleeps in. Pontius Pilate awoke. He had slept soundly the night before. His wife, who was still asleep beside him, had had no nightmares. He hadn't woken up to feel her gripping his wrist with both hands. He hadn't had to roll over on his side and kiss her forehead while she sobbed through tightly closed eyelids and gnashed her teeth. She didn't speak to him in gibberish words, not Latin, not Aramaic, while he held her face against his chest. Nor had she spit or scratched as she had on the worst night, Thursday, when all the unconscious tremors and secret terrors of her disturbed sleep had finally climaxed in a fit of prolonged dry heaving that failed to bring up even one morsel of her dinner from that evening. Excuse me. No, she had not disturbed him at all. His own sleep had been dreamless, and he had no memory of having slept, but he felt calm and refreshed. Outside it rained lightly, a relief after a week that had been oppressively warm. Even when the clouds had finally come the afternoon before, they had brought only darkness with them and no hint of moisture. But now the morning air was cool. Although he had no real interest in Jewish traditions, he had become fond of the Sabbath. It was a welcome escape from the mix of fanaticism, both religious and political, and banality that had come to dominate his working days. Every zealot was lighting candles. Every Messiah was eating braided bread. The cycle of conflict and the anticipation of conflict, which many men seemed to be slaves of, more so than of Rome, took a grudging break for 1 day out of 7, and this morning he did not have to fear for the time when rigor and pragmatism would no longer be weapons enough to keep barbarism, and worse, idealism, at bay. This morning he could sleep late and listen to the rain. He wondered how many millions of men throughout history had been comforted by the sound of morning rain. He knew he had heard it talked about, had read about moments like this many times before, had himself had this experience on many other mornings, since childhood, maybe since infancy. Maybe all of humanity, every man had felt that waking calm, had been softened by the sound of falling water. He closed his eyes and saw all those men, thousands and thousands, lying on their backs, and all that rainwater, in unending flood, settling in the Dead Sea, falling and evaporating, leaving only salt behind. And his peace was transformed into horror. He reached out and grabbed his wife's wrist, waking her. Sunday, Jesus rises from the dead. There is still pain in his hands, in his feet, in his side. The shroud is caked with dried blood and clings to his skin. He checks his wounds to see if he is still bleeding. He is. The tomb is open. Morning light enters where the rock once was, but standing is difficult. And all this after just 33 years, 1/3 of the trinity of a natural life. What a burden it will be to walk into that light and preach hope. In the field of clay, Judas hangs, desiccated and at rest. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Fuck.
Oh, that's
thanks,
so
guys.
fucking good. That's like fucking cosmic.
Thanks. Yeah, I wrote it like 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't know. It's one of the pieces that I've written that I don't want to say that I'm most proud of, but it's one of the ones that is most personally meaningful to me. So I like to read it around this time of year. Anyway, thanks guys. Sadly, it's 11 now. So again, I think for 2 weeks in a row, we've just had too damn much shit packed into this night to have an open mic. But I swear to God, guys, we'll do an open mic next week. I'm sorry if you if you had something you wanted to read. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end it there. This has been another fucking episode of Misery Loves Company. If you're watching this on YouTube, actually maybe come by, stop by next week. It's always fun. We do this every Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can follow us at Misery Tourism. We tweet out the link every time. I'm getting tongue-tied here, so fuck it. We're done.